Chapter 693. Like and love couldn't be restrained. No matter how hard you tried, when you liked someone, you couldn't hide your eyes or your expression. No matter how much homework you did and how much psychological preparation you had, it was useless. That low voice of "I miss you" made sure Mengwan lose all her armor. She had thought many times that she might meet him again, but she didn't expect to meet him like this. She thought that 2 months was enough for her to do psychological preparation, enough for her to forget the person in front of her, and then she could return to her usual indifference. But when she really met him, she realized that her heartstrings were pulled and she couldn't control them at all. Smelling the familiar scent on his body and feeling the warmth brought by their lips and teeth, for a moment, she couldn't extricate herself. The dizziness only lasted for a moment. Mengwan heard footsteps in the distance. She suddenly came back to her senses and pushed Jean Hauser away forcefully. She took a big step back. Because she retreated too quickly, Mengwan's back hit the wall behind her. She felt a little pain, so she stabilized her body and stared at the man in front of her. Her gaze was very complicated. She lowered her eyes, and after a few breaths, the trace of charm just now completely dissipated. When she looked up again, Mengwan's eyes were filled with rationality and not a trace of emotion. An uncontrollable kiss was already the limit she could give. She couldn't do or afford to give more. She looked at Jean Hauser warily and turned around to leave. However, Jean Hauser blocked in front of her. Wan, didn't she like him just now? Jean Hauser, we've already broken up. Mengwan said this very calmly. Jean Hauser's eyes darkened. Wan, I didn't agree. That's your business. I thought we had already reached a tacit understanding. Wan. Sorry, I won't be entangled with a man who has a fiancé. Mengwan's attitude was firm. Jean Hauser went forward to stop her, but his phone rang just now. The number on it made him have no choice but to answer the call first. It was at this moment that Mengwan left the corridor. When Jean Hauser hung up the phone and walked out, he couldn't see Mengwan anymore. Of course, Wan Xianyang also disappeared. Mengwan sat in her car and looked at Wan Xianyang, who got into the car uninvited. She felt a little helpless. She thought she had made herself clear. In fact, the 2-year agreement that Mengwan mentioned at that time was indeed to shut Grandma Sher's mouth and stop her from having the idea of letting her parents adopt a child. But the other reason was that she wasn't sure how far she could go with Jean Hauser. Before that, she didn't want to get married, nor did she want to fall in love. He could use this as an excuse to avoid a lot of trouble. However, she didn't expect her mother to be so capable. Not only was she not repelled by her excuses and reasons, but she also found suitable men to go on blind dates with her again and again. On this point, she was really convinced. The car stopped at her apartment, and she looked at Wan Xianyang helplessly. She had just said that she was not feeling well and wanted to go home to rest. Wan Xianyang suggested that he send her home, no matter how she refused. When she reached the parking lot, he took her car keys and got in the car. Since you're not feeling well, let me drive. He knew that this was just her excuse, but Mengwan really couldn't kick him out of the driver's seat. I'm already home. As Mengwan spoke, she reached out her hand to Wan Xianyang, gesturing for him to get out of the car and return the car keys to her. Wan Xianyang got out of the car, but he didn't return the car keys to her. He was also very tall, and he just stood in front of the car and looked at Mengwan. That marrying into the family was something you deliberately made to make things difficult for me, right? What era was it now? Who would make such a request? Mengwan's expression didn't change. She was very clear about Wan Xianyang's family background. He was Hu Jinyao's childhood friend, so he probably wouldn't be too bad. No. I'm serious. Wan Xianyang looked at her, seemingly a little conflicted. Seriously speaking, putting aside the 1 or 2 illegitimate children his old man had accidentally created outside. His mother only gave birth to him. He didn't even have a sister or brother, so he had a very good relationship with Hu Jinyao and the others. Mengwan's condition really stumped him. Even if he was willing, his parents wouldn't agree. Wan Xianyang had a headache now. Even if this was indeed Mengwan's condition to make things difficult for him, he couldn't do it. Mengwan, what do you think? Let's each take a step back. Shi Mengwan looked at him, not understanding what he meant by taking a step back. If you're willing to agree to be with me, we can have 2 children. One will take your surname, and the other will take my surname. How about that? Shi Mengwan looked at Wan Xianying. At a certain moment, she was really touched. With Wan Xianying's family background and status, to be able to say such words was already a lot of sincerity. Wan Xianying, thank you. Shi Mengwan thanked him sincerely. Thank you so much. She didn't say more, but what else did Wan Xianying not understand? Yes, thank me, but you can't accept me, right? Wan Xianying, Meng, tell me the truth. Wan Xianying thought of what he had seen in France and some of the things that happened later. Do you have someone in your heart? Shi Mengwan was stunned for a moment. When she met Wan Xianying's clear eyes, she hesitated for a second and quickly nodded. I have someone I like. Wan Xianying looked as if he had expected it. No wonder. The atmosphere was a little silent. Shi Mengwan didn't know what she could say. She stood there, feeling a little awkward. It's fine. Wan Xianying was much calmer than her. I saw it a long time ago. Shi Mengwan's expression was strange. Wan Xianying smiled softly. If you don't have someone you like, why can't you see an outstanding man like me? Don't you think so? His words made the expression on Shi Mengwan's face relax a little. She chuckled. Because I'm blind. When she smiled, Wan Xianying also relaxed. There were some things that he didn't say after seeing through, but if he really said it, it would be better. All right. Then I hope you won't be blind for too long, Wan Xianying continued. Otherwise, the fake blind will become really blind. After rejecting Shi Mengwan's suggestion to send him back, Wan Xianying walked out of the neighborhood and left. Shi Mengwan looked at his back view, and the corners of her lips pursed into a straight line again. After being entangled with Jean Hauser for such a long time, she couldn't break it off, and it was still messy. After going back and forth so many times, wasn't she just blind? It was just that she didn't feel like she could control her heart. Moreover, her feelings for Jean Hauser weren't as simple as just being attracted to him. After more than a year of relying on each other, she had never forgotten the care and companionship she had once had. She shook her head and didn't let herself think of Jean Hauser again. No matter how difficult some things were, she had to learn to let go. Shi Mengwan didn't see Jean Hauser come looking for her that night, which made her feel relieved again. Her personality could be considered flamboyant, and her willpower could definitely be considered firm. However, all her rationality would become vulnerable in front of Jean Hauser. Perhaps she needed to stay away for a while? Why not fly to Rong City for a few days after she was done with this job? Not only could she accompany Su Qingsang, but she could also avoid Jean Hauser? Shi Mengwan had a good idea, but she didn't expect to see Jean Hauser guarding the door the next morning when she opened the door to go to work. Seeing that it was him, Shi Mengwan subconsciously took a step back, but when she thought that she had to go to work, she took another step forward. This step back and forward allowed her to stand in front of Jean Hauser. His tall stature made the entire door look extremely cramped. He also successfully blocked Shi Mengwan's way out. Jean Hauser, please move aside. I want to go out. I bought you breakfast. Jean Hauser acted as if he didn't see her cold face. You probably haven't had breakfast yet. Go to school after you eat? Shi Mengwan stared at the bag in Jean Hauser's hand. The logo on it was a very famous Hong Kong-style breakfast restaurant in Lin City. Retracting her gaze, Shi Mengwan's hand clenched the bag tightly. No need, thank you. I've eaten. Please move aside. His stiff tone was an obvious rejection, but in Jean Hauser's eyes, such a rejection wasn't thorough enough. He suddenly moved his face closer to Shi Mengwan. His sudden action startled Shi Mengwan, and her body naturally took a step back. Jean Hauser used the hand that wasn't carrying breakfast to place on her waist to stabilize her body. At the same time, he continued to move forward in front of her. The tip of his nose gently swept past her lips, and finally, he hugged her waist and took a step forward. The two of them stood together in the room. Jean Hauser hooked the tip of his foot and easily closed the door. Let's have breakfast. He raised the bag in his hand. Jean Hauser. Shi Mengwan pulled his hand away and said angrily, "I've eaten." "You've eaten? Are you sure? There's nothing to be uncertain about." Jean Hauser faced her and bent down again. "Your mouth is full of the smell of toothpaste, but there's no taste of breakfast." He said such frivolous words with a serious expression, which made Shi Mengwan's face turn red. She bit her lip and pursed her lips tightly. After realizing what she had done, she loosened her grip a little. "Jean Hauser, are you all right? Even if I haven't eaten, what does it have to do with you? I can go to the studio to eat. Can you move aside now?" Jean Hauser didn't move aside. He grabbed her hand and led her to the dining table. He was much stronger than her. Shi Mengwan tried a few times, but she couldn't break free. She could only let him pull her away. Jean Hauser placed the bag in his hand on the table, opened it, and took out several lunch boxes from inside. He placed them out one by one. "Let's eat." Shi Mengwan was finally able to break free from his hand when he placed the lunch boxes. She took a step back and stood about a meter away from Jean Hauser. "Jean Hauser, we've already broken up." If he didn't hear it clearly yesterday, she didn't mind saying it again today. Jean Hauser turned around and faced the coldness in her eyes. He took a step forward and stood in front of her. "I didn't agree. I don't need your consent." She had already decided and wouldn't change it. "Juan, do you have to do this? Jean Hauser, do you have to do this?" Shi Mengwan had a headache. She was really trying hard to control herself, and she was also trying hard to forget him. Why did he still have to appear? "You go." Shi Mengwan took a step back and pointed in the direction of the door. She didn't want this. She didn't like him coming and going as he pleased. If he couldn't afford the feelings she wanted, then he shouldn't provoke her anymore. Jean Hauser's brows furrowed tightly. He wanted to explain himself, but his phone rang again. He glanced at Shi Mengwan and picked up the phone. The news from the other end of the phone made his expression change. He glanced at Shi Mengwan with a serious expression. "I'll be right there." After hanging up the phone, he put away his phone and looked at Shi Mengwan. "I have something urgent to deal with. I have to go out now. No matter how unhappy you are, you still have to eat breakfast." After saying this, he resisted the urge to hug Shi Mengwan. Instead, he left in a hurry. Shi Mengwan looked at his back and felt the seriousness in his words just now. Although he hadn't appeared during this period of time, he had obviously lost some weight today. Jean Hauser's footsteps were a little fast, so fast that Shi Mengwan didn't even have time to ask him what had happened. However, her intuition told her that this matter wasn't ordinary. When the car stopped at the entrance of the first hospital, Tang Hua had already come out. When he saw Jean Hauser, he walked in front of him in a few steps. The car accident happened an hour ago. At that time, Miss Chen was about to go to work. Just as she was about to reach the Chen Corporation's building, a car rushed out from the corner and hit Miss Chen's car. Tang Hua said very clearly, "I've already called the police, and the car that caused the accident has been detained, but I think it's not ordinary." He didn't say the rest, but the meaning was quite clear. This accident wasn't an accident, but man-made. Jean Hauser didn't ask further and went straight into the hospital. When he went in, Chen Feifei was still being resuscitated. He couldn't ask how the doctor was doing. Not long after, Chen Yongchang also came. The moment he came for Jean Hauser. Without giving Jean Hauser a chance to speak, he directly waved his fist at him. However, before his fist could touch Jean Hauser had already taken a step back to avoid it. Chen Yongchang was very angry. He pointed his finger at Jean Hauser. "Ungrateful. You're ungrateful. I want you to take good care of Feifei. Is this how you take care of her? It's fine if you don't show up, but as soon as you show up, you sent Feifei to the hospital?" "Uncle, don't call me that. I can't afford it." Chen Yongchang was really angry. Jean Hauser couldn't refute it, and he didn't intend to defend himself. He had already asked Tang Hua to investigate why such a thing happened. The specific situation would have to wait for Tang Hua to finish investigating. However, he didn't wait for Tang Hua to give the results of the investigation. Jean Hauser's phone rang again. There were a few photos on the screen. One was of Chen Feifei getting into a car accident this morning, and another was of him and Chen Feifei together. There was also a photo of Chen Feifei alone. 3 photos and a sentence. It's not over yet. Zhang Hao's heart skipped a beat. There was no need to wait for the results of the investigation. This was the work of the Zhang family. He had thought that Zhang Kuan and Uncle Qi might retaliate, but he didn't expect that the other party would actually target Chen Feifei. No, he shouldn't be surprised. This was more like their style of doing things. Zhang Hao held his phone with a solemn expression. He turned around and was about to leave, but was stopped by Qin Yongcheng. "Where are you going? Where else can you go? Let me tell you, I won't let this matter go just like that. You must give our Feifei an explanation." Zhang Hao was silent. He couldn't give him an explanation. The only thing he could do was to avenge Chen Feifei so that those blind people wouldn't come to his door to cause trouble. "Uncle, don't worry. I will give you an explanation." This time, Zhang Hao wasn't in a hurry to leave. He waited outside the resuscitation room for Chen Feifei to wake up. After the doctor rescued her, he told them that Chen Feifei was out of danger. Now, there was no problem for the time being. Zhang Hao heaved a sigh of relief. But he couldn't completely relax. Chen Feifei's injuries weren't serious. She would be fine after a few days of rest. In his opinion, this didn't seem like they were deliberately trying to kill Chen Feifei. Instead, it seemed like they were giving him a warning. Realizing this, Zhang Hao suddenly had a bad premonition. Soon, he received a new text message on his phone. "Do you feel relieved? Zhang Hao, don't be happy too early. Do you think that just because you found a shield, we won't know who you really want to protect?" Zhang Hao's heart skipped a beat. He almost immediately thought of Shi Mengwan. With this thought, he couldn't sit still anymore. He didn't care how long it would take for Chen Feifei to wake up. He hurriedly turned around to look for Shi Mengwan. Nothing could happen to Shi Mengwan. Along the way, he kept urging the driver to drive faster. A little faster. His phone didn't ring again, but this kind of moment was even more torturous. His hand on his knee clenched tightly into a fist. He was still careless. He should have been more reliable. Shi Mengwan didn't eat the breakfast prepared by Zhang Hao. But she really wasn't a wasteful person. After thinking about it, she brought breakfast to the company and directly distributed it to the other people in the studio. But even so, she still felt that it wasn't enough. There was a ball of fire in her heart. That ball of fire made her want to burn Zhang Hao regardless of anything else. She was still thinking about how she should face Zhang Hao the next time he came, or whether she should use a more intense method. No matter what, she couldn't continue like this. Just as she made up her mind, she forced herself to divert her attention and stop thinking about Zhang Hao. On the other end, Zhang Hao suddenly rushed into her office. "Wanman." Xiaoji followed behind Zhang Hao and looked at her helplessly. Her expression was slightly conflicted. "Sister Shi, I can't stop him." "Wanwan." Zhang Hao heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Shi Mengwan was safe and sound. He went forward to hug her. He needed to confirm her safety, but Shi Mengwan suddenly raised her hand and placed it on his chest. Anger gradually appeared on her face again. Chapter 694. Shi Mengwan refused to be entangled like this. She needed to forget Zhang Hao in the shortest time possible, and not let him appear in front of her again and again. However, Zhang Hao acted as if he didn't notice the ugly expression on her face. He suddenly reached out and held her in his arms. Shi Mengwan was stunned for a moment. She wanted to push him away, but he hugged her very tightly. Zhang Hao's chin touched the top of Shi Mengwan's hair. Smelling the fragrance of her hair, he felt his mood slowly calm down. He tightened his grip on her waist. The feeling of worrying that something would happen to her made him lose his mind for a moment. Shi Mengwan didn't let him hug her for too long. She suddenly raised her elbow and slammed it hard into his chest. Zhang Hao wasn't prepared for her to attack him. He took 2 steps back and let go of her at the same time. Shi Mengwan took a deep breath. Her willpower really wasn't strong, especially every time she encountered something related to Zhang Hao. But this didn't mean that she was someone without a bottom line or principles. On the contrary, it was precisely because she had principles and bottom lines that she couldn't accept Jean House's actions. Jean House, do you have to do this? Did he have to use such a method to constantly get close to her and shake her willpower? 1-1. Jean House thought about Chen Feifei's car accident, and his brows furrowed tightly. Those explanations weren't easy to say, and he didn't want her to know about those worries. However, looking at Shi Mengwan's clueless expression, he hesitated again. He didn't speak, and Shi Mengwan didn't know what she could say, so she also remained silent. In the silent silence, the two of them faced each other. After a few minutes, Shi Mengwan finally couldn't stand the situation in front of her. She didn't want to speak anymore, nor did she look at Jean House. She turned around and returned to her seat. She still had an order to finish. She wanted to finish it quickly so that she could go to Rong City to see Su Qingsang. Although she didn't lack people to take care of her now, and she was a doctor in the obstetrics and gynecology department, she still wanted to see her with her own eyes and make sure that she was safe. Just as her hand touched the mouse, Jean House walked in front of her. He held her hand, making it impossible for her to continue for a while. Jean House. Even if he was crazy, he should have had enough, right? Come with me to Qingqing. He wanted to go to Qing City to personally solve the problems of the Jean family. Before that, he had to put her in front of him, under his eyes, before he could feel at ease. Shi Mengwan blinked. For a moment, she thought that the man in front of her was possessed. What did you say? Come with me to Qingqing. As if he was afraid that Shi Mengwan didn't understand, he didn't mind explaining more clearly, my father is from Qing City. My home is also in Qingqing. I want to take you back. Shi Mengwan looked at his hand that was holding hers and chuckled. You mean, bring my parents? Jean House frowned. He didn't mean that. In his heart, no one in the Jean family was qualified to be the head of the family. You don't need to see them. In Jean House's heart, they were just a group of unimportant people. In fact, between him and Jean Kuan, it was a matter of life and death. Shi Mengwan misunderstood his meaning. She couldn't tell what she was thinking. The only thing she could be sure of was that Jean House had never thought of bringing her to meet his family. Jean House, you should go. I won't go to Qing City with you. She had heard from Shi Mengwan that Jean House's father had married another woman and had a stepmother. She reckoned that it wasn't just a stepmother. The stepmother might have her own children. Under such circumstances, Jean House's relationship with his family was definitely not good. She wouldn't really ask to see his family. However, Jean House's words just now made her feel a little uncomfortable. Since he didn't want to bring her to Qing City to meet his family, why did he say that he wanted to bring her to Qing City? She pulled her hand back from Jean House's hand. The wariness on Shi Mengwan's face was even more obvious than before. Wanwen, the expression on Jean House's face became more and more conflicted. He wanted to mention it more or less, but he didn't know where to start. I still have something to do. If there's nothing else, President Jean, please leave. As she spoke, she focused her attention on the screen in front of her again. Jean House was about to say something when his phone rang again. It was Tang Hua. He brought 2 pieces of news. Those 2 pieces of news made Jean House's expression change slightly. After hanging up the phone, he looked at Shi Mengwan. She was staring at the screen intently. The mouse on her hand clicked a few times, as if she wasn't affected by him at all. Jean House couldn't say the rest of his words. Wanwan, I might be busy for a while. When I'm done, I'll come pick you up and take you to Qing City. No need. Shi Mengwan didn't even raise her head. I'm not interested. Her cold tone was full of resistance. Jean House was helpless. Moreover, it was indeed a troubled time. He could only leave first. Wanwan, wait for me. I'll definitely come pick you up. At that time, if everything was settled, it would be easier to pick her up and take her to Qing City. Shi Mengwan acted as if she didn't hear him and was still focused on the work at hand. However, after Jean House left, she put down the mouse and looked at an unknown point in the distance. No one knew what she was thinking. Jean House left the office building. Tang Hua had already parked the car downstairs. He quickly got into the car. Tang Hua looked a little anxious. Boss, what do you think we should do about this? That old fart, Jean Kuan, actually issued a kill order for Boss. Even though such a kill order was only issued within the Jean family. But what kind of family was the Jean family? In the early years, they relied on doing some unorthodox businesses to bring the Jean family to its current state. The Jean family had their own assassin hall. They might not be comparable to the top professional assassins in the world, but they were still quite powerful. All these years, Jean Kuan had used this assassin hall to get rid of many of his thorns. Now, Jean Kuan had actually used such a kill order on him. It wasn't a warning, nor was it a warning. He really wanted his life. Jean House's expression had a rare trace of seriousness. Previously he thought that Chen Feifei's injury was a warning to him, but now that he thought about it, it wasn't. Thinking back to what Uncle Chi said when he came looking for him last time, he seemed to understand a little. Whether it was the second or third generation of the Jean family, they didn't have a worthy successor. Jean Kuan was already old. It wouldn't be that easy for the Jean family to continue the glory of the past few decades. Uncle Chi was probably behind Jean Kuan's back and wanted him to take up the mantle of the Jean family. However, he didn't know that his hatred for the Jean family and Jean Kuan had already been carved into his bones. No matter what the Jean family did, he remained unmoved. Boss? He didn't say anything. Tang Hua was a little worried. Go back to Qing City. Jean Hauze quickly made a decision within a few seconds. Tang Hua wasn't surprised. But if we leave, what about Chen Feifei? Actually, he wanted to ask, what about Shi Mengwan? The people from the Jean family were just flustered for a moment. They weren't stupid. When they reacted, they would definitely understand that Chen Feifei was just a shield. She was useless at all. Jean Hauze narrowed his eyes as if he had thought of something. Let's go. We'll go to the hospital before returning to Qing City. No matter what, Chen Feifei's injury this time was because of him. After all, the Chen family had saved his life. He still had to give them an explanation. The weather in Qing City had already started to turn cold. Jean Hauze sat in the car and watched as the driver shook off the tail behind him for the 13th time. He glanced at the traffic behind him. Ahua, how's the old man doing recently? He's still hanging on by a thread. He had already suffered 2 strokes, and this stroke had brought about quite serious consequences. However, Jean Kuan was lucky. He didn't die even though he was like this. He still had time to deal with Jean Hauze. It was really because his previous movements were too light. Tell old 6 and old 7 to move faster. Although this was a little forceful, he had no other choice at this time. Tang Hua nodded in understanding. Okay, I believe that 6th and 7th brothers will arrange it well. Hopefully. Jean Hauze hoped so, but he couldn't really let down his guard completely. In fact, the Jean family had been operating in Qing City for decades. Their power was deeply rooted, and it really wasn't something that could be completely destroyed in a short period of time. He had underestimated his enemy before. But no matter what, he wouldn't stop, even if this process was more difficult than he had thought. Jean Hauze narrowed his eyes, his expression full of danger. Jean Kuan was a very subjective and very assertive person. In his heart, if there was someone who didn't do what he wanted, then it must be someone else's fault, not his. He never reflected on his own problems, so naturally, he wouldn't feel that it was his fault that the son he had taught was now reduced to a housewife with a woman. This was that woman's fault, it was that woman's problem. She was the one who seduced his son, and she was the one who made Jean Lai become like this. Since Jean Kuan had been in a shady business back then, he wasn't just ordinarily ruthless. When he knew that that woman had caused his son to become like this, he had the intention to kill her. Towards that woman, he had to get rid of her. But at first, he didn't find an opportunity to do so. Jean Lai's maternal family seemed to know something, and they were still very protective of this grandson and his grandson's child. He didn't have a chance to do so for a while, but it didn't mean that he would never have a chance to do so. He decided to wait for a while, wait for a suitable opportunity, and then get rid of that woman. At first, he didn't wait for an opportunity, which made him depressed. Later, he didn't even hesitate to bring Zhang Ji and Min Quan to his side, thinking of nurturing them for a period of time. But with Jean Lai in front of him, The other illegitimate children naturally couldn't satisfy Jean Kuin. The more dissatisfied he was, the more he hated Jean Lai, hated Jean Lai's wife. Later, Jean Kuen's opportunity finally came. Because of the change of power, Jean Lai's maternal family had encountered some trouble. He couldn't care less about Jean Lai for the time being. For Jean Kuen, this was an opportunity. Previously, because he was worried about Jean Lai's maternal family, he didn't make a move. Now that something had happened to Jean Lai's maternal family, his opportunity had come. At this time, Jean Lai and his wife had already been living outside for several years. The family of three lived the most ordinary life in another city. Jean Kuen, who saw the investigation information again, was still extremely angry. Because after so many years, he hadn't picked out a child who could inherit his career. Jean Lai, who could inherit his career, was bewitched by a woman. He couldn't tolerate it. Jean Kuen decided to get rid of that woman. Before getting rid of her, he went to the door with the last trace of father-son relationship. In the beginning, Jean Kuen decided to be polite before using force. If Jean Lai was willing to go home with him obediently, then he could only kill that woman and let him bring that bastard home. But if Jean Lai didn't listen to him, then don't blame him for being impolite. When Jean Kuen came to the door, Jean Lai was naturally very surprised. He had no idea that his father had actually targeted him a few years ago. Jean Lai was still happy to see his father. But that happiness didn't last long. Jean Lai, you disappoint me too much. Ever since he was young, Jean Kuen, who had always been cold-blooded and indifferent, still put on such a face. Dad, don't call me. Jean Kuen was very angry. For a woman, where did you put the honor of the Jean family and our family? Jean Lai was silent. He had indeed let down Jean Kuen's nurturing. However, Dad, Roliu is a good woman. If you had really come into contact with her, you would definitely like her. Humph, impossible. It's true. Jean Lai was still too naive. At this time, he was still trying to convince Shi Kuen to accept his wife. Roliu is a very good woman. Dad, you really… Shut up. Jean Kuen glared at his son in front of him, wishing he could strangle him to death. However, the purpose of his visit today wasn't to argue with his son. Jean Kuen's face was cold. He took out a gun and threw it in front of Jean Lai. Take it. Dad. Jean Kuen was shocked. He wasn't unfamiliar with guns, but after leaving the Jean family, he hadn't touched one for many years. You're my son. You can't be so cowardly, right? Jean Kuen sneered. Don't say that I, your father, didn't give you a chance. What do you mean, Dad? Pick it up. Jean Kuen shouted. Jean Lai hesitated for a moment, but in the end he still picked up the gun. That? Kill her. As Jean Kuen spoke, he pointed at Xiao Ruoliu, who had just come down from upstairs and had just settled her bad boy. That? Jean Lai had been living too comfortably in the past few years. It was so comfortable that he had forgotten what the Jean family relied on to make their fortune. He looked at the gun in his hand, then at Jean Kuen. In the end, as if he was throwing a hot potato, he threw the gun out and threw it on the coffee table. Are you crazy? Jean Lai's expression was full of shock and accusation. I'll say. Jean Kuen looked at his useless child and pushed the gun to Jean Lai's side again. Didn't you say that you wanted to go back to the Jean family? Since that's the case, then kill this woman. If she dies, you can go back to the Jean family. Dad, if you say that, I won't go back to the Jean family for the rest of my life. Chapter 695. Jean Hauser woke up from his dream with a start. The gunshot seemed to still be lingering in his ears. His head hurt a little. He rubbed his temples, but he couldn't suppress the headache no matter what. Ever since he returned to Qingqing, he couldn't restrain the nightmares from that day. Even if he wanted to resist, it would be useless. He got up and looked at the gloomy night sky outside. He took out his phone, unlocked it, and looked at Shi Mengwan's number on it. In the end, he didn't pull it out. At dawn, he woke up early and went to the gym downstairs to work out. He was used to getting up early. He had the habit of doing morning exercises every day. Not only morning exercises, but also boxing. The security of Sakura Manor was quite good. Moreover, he had arranged many people to guard this villa, both openly and secretly. When he came out of the gym, the staff had already prepared breakfast. He finished reading the financial news while eating breakfast. As soon as he put down the bowl in his hand, Tang Hua entered the door with a rare solemn expression. "Boss, something happened to Sixth brother." Jean Hauser looked at Tang Hua with a malicious expression. "What's going on? Speak clearly." "Last time, you asked Sixth brother to keep an eye on the club under the Jean family's name. He seemed to have found a breakthrough. The day before yesterday, he told me that he wanted to go in and take a look. But until today, I haven't received any news from him." Tang Hua's face was a little anxious. This group of people had been together since they were young, so they were clear about their character. "Boss, Old Six isn't someone who doesn't know what's important. If nothing had happened to him, no matter what, there would definitely be news. Now that there's been no news from him for an entire day, I'm afraid." Tang Hua didn't say it out loud, but he believed that Jean Hauser would understand. Jean Hauser was silent. He thought about Uncle Chi's words last time and the killing order. His expression was solemn. "Have you searched?" He knew about the clubhouse that Tang Hua was talking about. Previously, Old Six had said that he wanted to go and check it out. He knew that it wasn't going to be easy. He tried to stop Old Six, but he couldn't do so. "I've tried, but there's no news yet." Jean Hauser's expression was solemn. He sat there with his brows tightly furrowed. The Jean family couldn't be dealt with in a day. After such a long time, he had slowly laid out his plans and slowly closed the net. Ever since he decided to go against the Jean family, he knew that this was a road full of thorns. No matter what, the Jean family was a family that had been accumulated for so many years. It was impossible to destroy them overnight. He had this understanding. However, this understanding did not include sacrificing the lives of those he regarded as his closest friends. Let Old Seven take some people to find out where Old Six is and bring him back. But Tang Hua looked like he wanted to say something, but he hesitated. He didn't say what he didn't say, but Jean Hauser understood what he meant. If Old Seven brought people there and didn't manage to bring Old Six out, he might end up getting himself killed instead. If that was the case, then it really wasn't a good thing. Jean Hauser also realized that it was not appropriate to let Seventh brother look for someone. Perhaps he should directly find a breakthrough point from the Jean family. His phone rang again. The person on the other end of the phone was Uncle Chi. "I think we can meet now." "I don't see any need to meet him." Jean Hauser had a very bad impression of Uncle Chi. "Is that so?" Uncle Chi smiled and said a name. Then he asked, "Are you sure you don't want to see me?" Jean Hauser's expression was ugly. He gripped the phone in his palm tightly and resisted the urge to throw it out. 2 hours later, Jean Hauser met Uncle Chi in the office of Qingqing Company. Uncle Chi's expression was much more smug than the last time he came. Jean Hauser was expressionless. Even if he was in a weak position, he wouldn't admit defeat in front of the Jean family. Uncle Chi wasn't in a hurry to speak. He slowly took out a few photos from his pocket and placed them on Jean Hauser's desk. In the photo, a man who looked to be less than 30 years old was tied to a chair. The man's body was obviously injured, as if he had been beaten. No matter how calm Jean Hauser was, his expression still changed slightly when he saw Old Six like this. But he quickly calmed down. He looked at Uncle Chi coldly. His slightly narrowed eyes were sinister and dangerous. Uncle Chi wasn't annoyed by his glare. He chuckled. "How about we discuss a condition now?" Jean Hauser frowned. His expression was very cold. "I don't think there's anything to discuss between us." "Why do you say that?" "I don't believe you don't know what the current situation is." Jean Hauser didn't answer him. Uncle Chi leaned forward slightly. "I can guarantee that you won't be able to eat the Jean family in one go now. But if you're willing to take a step back, you can. Why don't you take a step back and we'll both be happy?" If possible, Uncle Chi really didn't want to beg a junior like this. But he had no choice. Jean Yi, Jean Li, Jean Yang, and the others, ever since the last time, not only did they not unite as one, but they also caused more and more trouble. Jean Li's ability wasn't bad, but the Jean family had a big business. He hadn't taken on all the responsibilities in the past. There were many things that he couldn't make decisions about. He really didn't have Jean Kuen's demeanor back then. If it wasn't for the fact that Uncle Chi really couldn't find anyone, he wouldn't have put down his old face and come here to beg Jean Hauser. Jean Hauser curled up the corners of his lips. Take a step back? How? How about you take over the Jean family and let the Jean family become yours? Are you sure you can make the decision? Jean Kuen isn't dead yet. He really called Jean Kuen's name. His expression was full of ridicule without the slightest bit of respect. Uncle Chi wasn't angry. I don't believe that you don't know what kind of situation the old man is in now. So now I can make the decision. Uncle Chi had been by Jean Kuen's side for more than 30 years. In the Jean family, he had absolute authority. He was also confident that as long as he was around, those people wouldn't be able to cause any trouble. Jean Hauser was silent. He didn't respond to Uncle Chi's words. Uncle Chi wasn't in a hurry either. He was extremely patient today, waiting for Jean Hauser to compromise. Tang Hua, who was standing beside Jean Hauser, looked at his conflicted face. His lips moved, but he wanted to say something, but he stopped. As if sensing his subordinate's thoughts, Jean Hauser picked up the stack of photos and looked at the complacency and certainty on Uncle Chi's face. He tore off the photos one by one. I refuse. You, Uncle Chi, who hadn't expected such an answer, was stunned on the spot. He was stunned for nearly a minute. When Jean Hauser asked Tang Hua to chase him away, he suddenly placed his hands on the desk. Jean Hauser, are you sure? There's nothing to be uncertain about. Sixth brother's life wouldn't be in danger for the time being. Uncle Chi was afraid that he would use extreme measures, so he didn't dare to hurt sixth brother for the time being. And he was confident that he could bring sixth brother out. Don't you want Lu Tao's life anymore? Lu Tao was referring to sixth brother. He's just a subordinate, but if you dare to hurt him, I will repay the Jean family 10 times, 100 times. Jean Hauser wasn't afraid of Uncle Chi's threat. You can try. Really? Uncle Chi sneered and took out a few more photos from his pocket. Yes, you're amazing. You don't care about Lu Tao's life, so don't you care about her life? This time, it was a photo of Shi Mengwan on the desk. One of them was a photo of Shi Mengwan alone, while the second photo was of Jean Hauser and Shi Mengwan dancing on the dance floor together in France. Jean Hauser's gaze became sinister and dangerous. He almost couldn't help but stand up, but he quickly sat down again. If you dare to touch a single strand of her hair, do you believe that I will let you have a taste of what it's like to beg for death? Don't get agitated. Uncle Chi didn't care about his threat at all. If you're so agitated, we won't be able to calm down later, don't you think? Jean Hauser knew that he had lost control just now. He should have acted a little calmer. This kind of weakness being grasped in the hands of others made him feel very unhappy. What exactly do you want to do? Uncle Chi smiled. Stop all your revenge, go back to the Jean family, and support the overall situation. Jean Hauser's expression was rather ugly. Uncle Chi wasn't in a hurry. He had been by Jean Kuen's side for 30 years and had walked step by step to where he was now in the Jean family. He wasn't someone to be trifled with. What if I refuse? I think you don't have a choice. Uncle Chi didn't mind telling the truth. Yes, you can also refuse, but I can't guarantee the lives of Mr. Liu and Miss Shi. Looking at Jean Hauser's gloomy face, Uncle Chi chuckled. Of course, you can also tie me up now and use me, an old fellow, to exchange hostages with the Jean family. However, I'm already so old. If I really die, I won't have any regrets. If the two of them really die with me, it'll be worth it. Don't you think so? Jean Hauser stared at Uncle Chi's face. He didn't restrain his aura at all. That pressure made even an experienced person like Uncle Chi tremble slightly. However, the more Jean Hauser acted like this, the more determined Uncle Chi was to let him return to the Jean family. Only such a person could support the Jean family. The atmosphere in the office was rather silent. Jean Hauser sat there without moving. Tang Hua, who was behind him, listened to him completely. Naturally, he wouldn't disturb him at such a time. He didn't speak, and Uncle Chi wasn't in a hurry. He didn't expect Jean Hauser to agree immediately, but he was gambling. After all, he was the child of Jean Lai and Xiao Roliu. Jean Hauser was like Jean Kuan, but not like him. His methods were similar, but he was afraid that there was still a soft spot in his heart. And this soft spot was enough for Uncle Chi to make use of. 10 minutes later, Jean Hauser finally said, "Okay, I agree. But I have a few conditions." "Speak." "First, this old man is old. Since his health isn't good, don't come out all the time. Rest well." This was to separate Jean Kuan. Uncle Chi was a little hesitant, but in the end he nodded. Anyway, he was Jean Kuan's spokesperson now. He would do what Jean Kuan instructed. As long as he kept an eye on it, no one would cause trouble in front of Jean Kuan. Second, I'll take over the Jean family. I don't want to see the other Jean family members. This is a little difficult. After all, they all have their own duties now. For the time being, they won't hinder you. If you don't agree, there's nothing to talk about. I'm that person's grandson. If you provoke me, at most, we'll fight to the death. I agree. In any case, it wasn't much use for those idiots to stay in the Jean family. It didn't matter if they stayed or not. Third, let my people go. Also, you have to promise that you'll never touch my people. You're not allowed to hurt them. No problem. Since you're willing to take over the Jean family, you're my master. Not only will I get people to revoke the kill order against you, but I can also get people to protect the people you care about. Protect? What did this protection mean? Jean Hauser couldn't be clearer. He looked at Uncle Chi coldly. Give me a week. I'll arrange things and enter the company. I'll wait for you for a week. Uncle Chi, who had received an affirmative answer, was very easy to talk to. If you think a week isn't enough, more time is fine. Uncle Chi left. Jean Hauser sat on the chair and rubbed the space between his eyebrows. Tang Hua asked worriedly, "Boss?" Jean Hauser didn't look at him. He half closed his eyes and said softly, "Don't worry. I know what I'm doing." Shi Mingwan's life returned to peace. After that day, Jean Hauser never came to look for her again. In the blink of an eye, another month passed. Su Qingsang's stomach was already big. She wanted to fly to Rong City to see her a few times, but she had too many things to do. The studio recruited 2 newcomers and slowly got the hang of it. However, many clothes were requested to be mass-produced on Weibo. Of course, it wouldn't be lacking in anything, but it was still lacking a little something. If she wanted to make it big, she had to mass-produce it. Shi Mingwan understood this logic. In the following time, she went to a few factories and a few raw material manufacturers. She was so busy that she had no time to care about her own matters. Mother Shi had probably guessed something. Ever since the last blind date was ruined, she didn't mention asking her to go on a blind date again. This way, Shi Mingwan was much quieter. That day, she went to the last factory. It was already very late when she returned to the city. Although this section of the road had been repaired, there weren't many cars. Shi Mingwan drove halfway. She didn't know if it was because of stones or something else, but the car jolted. Shi Mingwan quickly reacted and gripped the steering wheel tightly. Finally, after stabilizing the car, she was about to continue driving. However, she realized that the car seemed to have broken down or something. It actually didn't move. She tried to start the car a few times but couldn't. After that, she quickly got out of the car to see what was wrong. If it didn't work, she could only call for a tow truck. Shi Mingwan got out of the car and opened the front cover. She didn't know much about the problem with the car. She only did this to see how to solve it. It was already late. She was alone in this place where there was no village or shop. Just thinking about it made her a little scared. She propped up the front cover of the car and checked it with the light of her phone. With her level, she couldn't find anything wrong with her car. After checking for a long time, Shi Mingwan really couldn't tell. Just as she was about to call for a tow truck, a voice came from behind her. "Miss, the car is broken. Do you want me to take a look at it for you?" Shi Mingwan was startled by the sudden sound. She turned around and saw a few young men in their early 20s surrounding her at some point in time. The one who spoke was a man in the lead. He was wearing a black jacket. He also seemed to think that he was handsome and shook his head. "Miss, come, let us examine you." Shi Mengwan swallowed her saliva. The situation in front of her didn't seem to be very good. "No need, I've already called for a tow truck." She held her phone and wanted to call the police without leaving a trace. However, the man in the lead took her phone away at this moment. "Miss, don't be so ungrateful. No matter what, we brothers have good intentions." As he spoke, he waved his hand behind him. "Come, you guys, give this beautiful lady a good examination." Under the night sky, Shi Mengwan's face was pale. She forced herself to calm down and reached out her hand to the man. "Give me back my phone. I don't need you to examine me." "Miss, maybe you'll need it later?" The man in the black jacket smiled evilly. The few people he brought with him had already approached Shi Mengwan. Shi Mengwan was really scared this time. She was only one person, but the other party had 6. She pressed her body tightly against the front cover of the car, still thinking about how to escape. Suddenly, the sound of a car came from behind her. She turned her face, and the lights from the car shone on her face, causing her to narrow her eyes for a moment. The men in the black jacket weren't in a hurry to move. They thought that they would continue after the other party left. Unexpectedly, the car stopped beside them. It was also at this moment that the man in the black jacket saw it clearly. The other party wasn't a car. It was 5 cars. There were 2 Bentleys in front and 2 Bentleys in the back. The one in the middle was a Rolls-Royce Phantom. Even people without common sense were stunned when they saw this row of luxury cars. Not to mention hooligans like the yellow-haired man. Shi Mengwan also saw it clearly now. She saw many tall men in black suits getting out of the cars in front and behind her. Someone opened the back door of the Rolls-Royce, and a pair of extremely slender and powerful legs came out first. In the light of the car lights, the owner of the legs walked towards Shi Mengwan step by step. Shi Mengwan swallowed her saliva. Before she could react, the owner of the legs had already walked in front of her. The few young men were so scared that they didn't dare to speak. Zhang Haoze looked at Shi Mengwan and reached out his hand to her. Shi Mengwan didn't know what to think of, but she actually dodged and pulled her hand back. Not only that, she even took a step to the side. She forgot that there was someone beside her. As she stood there, she bumped into a hooligan standing beside her. This time, Shi Mengwan didn't have time to dodge. Her body moved to the side, but she lost her balance and fell to the side. Zhang Haoze's hand caught her waist in time. In the next second, she was carried horizontally. Pressing her head into his chest, Zhang Haoze gave the leader of the men in black a look. The man understood. The man in the black jacket realized that something was wrong, but it was too late to escape. Soon, waves of wailing and fighting sounds came from behind Zhang Haoze and the others. Shi Mengwan wanted to poke her head out to take a look, but she was already carried into the car by Zhang Haoze. Shi Mengwan and Zhang Haoze hadn't seen each other for almost 2 months. Sitting in the car, she didn't have time to look outside. She just looked at Zhang Haoze and sensitively realized that Zhang Haoze in front of her seemed to be different. Chapter 696. The car was very spacious and very quiet. Shi Mengwan took some time to recover from the frightening moment just now. Just now, she almost thought that she was going to, retracting her thoughts, she looked at Zhang Haoze in front of her with complicated emotions. From when she was a young girl until now, every time she was in danger, he was the one who saved her. She couldn't say what she felt in her heart, but at this moment, her mood was very subtle. She couldn't think about anything else, so she just stared blankly at Zhang Haoze. Only then did she realize that the person in front of her seemed to be different. After not seeing him for nearly 2 months, Zhang Haoze's brows were still the same, but the expression revealed inside was very different. In the past, he was a little dark and arrogant. Looking at him now, his dark and arrogant demeanor was still there. But there was something else. The moment he got out of the car just now, his eyes were cold and his gaze was like a knife. It gave people the feeling that he was a sword that had finally been sharpened. This kind of superior aura made Shi Mengwan subconsciously swallow her saliva. The car was still parked. Shi Mengwan turned around and saw that the man in black who was in the lead outside the car window had already been beaten to the ground. The scene was a little bloody. Shi Mengwan turned around to look at Zhang Haoze. Is that enough? If they continued to fight, someone would probably die. Zhang Haoze glanced at her and didn't answer. She came out to talk about the factory today. She was wearing a casual suit and her long hair was tied into a ponytail. She looked much more beautiful and youthful. He picked up the ponytail behind her head and leaned over to sniff it gently. This action didn't contain much of an erotic feeling, but Shi Mengwan felt an inexplicable ambiguity which made her very uncomfortable. It's really enough. She forced herself to focus on something else. Tell them to stop. Zhang Haoze still had her hair in his hand. He moved his face closer. Do you know what they wanted to do just now? Shi Mengwan's breathing tightened. Of course she knew. Just call the police. Zhang Haoze stared at her face for a long time and knocked on the car window. The people outside almost instantly stopped kicking and hitting. The group of people stood beside the car in front and back. Shi Mengwan couldn't help but turn around to look at Zhang Haoze. This person had caused such a big scene. He was probably different now, wasn't he? She didn't have the chance to ask the question in her heart. Those people had already gotten into the car, and the car started up again. She couldn't help but turn to look at him. The person in front of her still had the same face, but she felt a little unfamiliar. Zhang Haoze watched as her mind wandered. His lips moved forward and he was about to kiss her lips. Shi Mengwan subconsciously avoided it. Such an action made Zhang Haoze's eyes darken. He put his arm around her waist and grabbed her, not letting her leave. He lowered his head and kissed her without warning. Shi Mengwan didn't have time to escape. This time, Zhang Haoze kissed her. The lights in the carriage were dim. Occasionally, there was the reflection of the street lamp. His deep facial features could not be seen clearly at this moment. Oh! Shi Mengwan felt pain on her lips. He bit her. She stared at him. He stepped back, but his hand was still on her waist. The distance between the two faces was less than 3 centimeters. The atmosphere in front of him was too intimate. Shi Mengwan wasn't used to it. At this moment, he was at a loss for words. My car. It wasn't just the car. There was also her bag in the car. Don't worry, they will take care of it. His breath brushed against her face. Shi Mengwan was about to step back, but for some reason, she closed her eyes. This way, it seemed like she was inviting Zhang Haoze to kiss her. Zhang Haoze did as she wished and kissed her once again. Shi Mengwan looked at the 5 cars parked in front of her apartment and felt a headache coming on. She didn't understand why things had become like this again. She looked at Zhang Haoze speechlessly. Can you not be so ostentatious? She still had to live in this neighborhood in the future. If others saw Zhang Haoze's actions, what would they think? Zhang Haoze shook his head. The current situation was special. Although he made a deal with Uncle Qi and took over the Zhang family. But the Zhang family wasn't peaceful either. The current Zhang family was like a volcano under a calm surface that could erupt at any time. Whether it was Zhang Yi, Zhang Li, or Zhang Yang, none of them were convinced of him. In the past month or so, they had been playing tricks behind his back. Zhang Haoze didn't take them seriously, but he wouldn't relax with the necessary defensive measures. Why are you still looking for me? Shi Mengwan was angry. I remember that we broke up. I also remember that I didn't agree. He wanted to get out of the car, but Shi Mengwan sat there and refused to get out. Zhang Haoze. Shi Mengwan felt tired every time she communicated with him. What do you take me for? What do you take me for? You appear whenever you want and disappear whenever you want. When you disappeared, there was no news at all. When you appeared, you insisted on me cooperating with your performance. What kind of logic is this? Her face was expressionless. The emotions that had arisen when she saw him had all turned into calmness. Zhang Haoze looked at her and suddenly reached out to hug her. I'm sorry. Shi Mengwan's body stiffened, but Zhang Haoze acted as if he didn't feel it. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have disappeared and appeared whenever I wanted. But if you're unhappy, I can promise you that I won't do this in the future. Shi Mengwan didn't know how to react to this sudden apology. But she quickly remembered that this was the second time Jean Hauser had apologized. Last time, he also said he was sorry, but what happened in the end? It wasn't that Shi Mengwan didn't love him, but she didn't want to believe him anymore. The price of believing him was too high. She realized that she couldn't afford it. Jean Hauser. She should be happy that such a person made such a promise at such a time, but she really couldn't be happy. Do you know? She looked at her fingertips and lowered her eyes. Her expression couldn't be seen clearly. I don't dare to believe your promise anymore. You might not know, but I'm very tired when I'm with you. I often wonder if I did something wrong. I often wonder what you're doing in places that I don't know about. Will those things be dangerous? Jean Hauser. Shi Mengwan finally looked up at him and met his eyes. It's too tiring to be with you. I don't want to be tired anymore. As she spoke, she pushed open the car door and got out. She turned around and went into the apartment. Jean Hauser got out of the car and waved his hand. Although the leader didn't agree, the 5 cars drove away together. Jean Hauser slowed down and followed behind Shi Mengwan. Shi Mengwan quickened her pace, and Jean Hauser followed behind her. When they reached the elevator, she wanted to tell him to stop following her, but this wasn't her home, so she endured it. Jean Hauser didn't seem to notice the disgust in her eyes at all and just followed behind her. They entered the elevator and went upstairs. Shi Mengwan was silent all the way, so he followed her all the way. It wasn't until they stood at the door that Shi Mengwan finally couldn't help but turn around and glare at him. Mr. Jean, don't you have anywhere to go? Shi Mengwan's tone wasn't very good. I believe that with your current status, you should have your own place in Lin City, right? Even if you don't, I believe that Miss Chen would be happy to take you in, so I really don't understand why you keep following me. Jean Hauser looked at the anger on her face. This was her, right? She was lively and full of life. There was an almost imperceptible smile in his eyes. He leaned forward and placed one hand on the door behind her. I do have a place to stay. His face was almost pressed against her face, and his voice was low and seductive. But I just want to be by your side. This person's words of love were really deadly. Shi Mengwan's body was already tightly pressed against the door behind her. A man's lust would lead people astray. This was really true. The Jean Hauser in front of her could be considered a male version of Daji to her. Shi Mengwan never thought that she would hear Jean Hauser confess like this one day. Looking at his face, she was a little confused. You? Before she could finish the word, you, the door behind her opened with a ka. Shi Mengwan was stunned when she almost fell back. She had just steadied herself when she remembered that her bag was still in the car, so she didn't bring the key. Then, she lowered her head and saw Jean Hauser open the door with the key. Her lips opened and closed again. Didn't she ask him to return the key to her? Why did he still have it? When Jean Hauser opened the door, he used his other hand to hold her waist. He brought her in and closed the door. Jean Hauser. Shi Mengwan reached out her hand. Return the key. 1-1. Jean Hauser picked her up and held her body firmly in his arms. I miss you so much. He lowered his head and kissed her forehead. Don't you miss me? Who wants to miss you? Shi Mengwan went to pull his hand. Jean Hauser restrained her hand behind her back. Don't you miss me? I don't want to. Jean Hauser kissed her on the lips. Do you want to? Who would miss you? Get out of the way. Jean Hauser remembered again. Do you want to? I said, I don't want to, I don't want to, I don't want to. Jean Hauser, stop fooling around. I really don't miss you. Her voice rose a notch, and her face was flushed with anger. Jean Hauser narrowed his eyes slightly and suddenly carried her horizontally. Since you say you don't want to, then it proves that I've done too little before. It looks like I have to do something to make you remember it often. Jean Hauser, you're shameless. Jean Hauser wasn't angry when he heard this. Instead, he leaned his face close to her ear. Yes, I'll do something even more shameless later. Do you believe me? In terms of being a hooligan, how could Shi Mengwan be his match? Her body was placed on the bed. When she tried to get up, he piled on top of her and pressed her down. If she pushed him, he would have the ability to make her unable to move. The moment her hand was tied by his tie, Shi Mengwan gritted her teeth. You're raping me. Is that so? Zhang Haoze narrowed his eyes. Since you said that, I can only think of a way to make you willingly be raped by me. Shi Mengwan didn't understand what Zhang Haoze meant. However, when she was teased by him like a kitten and begged for mercy time and time again, she realized that this was really more shameful than being willing to do it. When Shi Mengwan was half awake and half dreaming, she felt herself being gently carried into the bathroom by Zhang Haoze. There was no bathtub, so she was carried by him the entire time. After he was done, he carefully dried her dry and carried her out again. He gently placed her on the bed. He took the hairdryer to dry her hair, then pulled up the blanket to cover her body. Shi Mengwan was about to fall asleep, so her body was very tired and sore. So much so that when she saw Zhang Haoze like this, not only did she not feel touched, but she felt angry instead. Bastard. She was angry. Zhang Haoze, can you not be like a stallion in heat every time? Zhang Haoze frowned because of her description. As if he had thought of something, he wrapped her hand in his arms. Sorry, I can't help it. He gently kissed her earlobe and felt her trembling slightly because of his action. He silently curled his lips, and his eyes were filled with joy. My self-control is very poor after meeting you. It was clearly his problem, so why was he blaming her now? Shi Mengwan didn't want to talk to him, and she was very sleepy. She pretended not to hear what Zhang Haoze said. She closed her eyes and wanted to sleep, but Zhang Haoze didn't allow it. He kissed her on the cheek again. Wanwan, come with me to Qing City. Shi Mengwan didn't even bother to answer. She didn't want to talk to him at all. I want you to stay by my side. Most importantly, other than those restless cousins, there was also Uncle Qi. He didn't trust anyone. He had to keep her under his nose. Only when he personally watched her and protected her would he be at ease. No. Shi Mengwan refused and turned her back to him. Zhang Haoze, I'm not going anywhere. She used her posture to show her resistance. Zhang Haoze looked at the back of her head and hooked her into his arms with his big hand. He lowered his head and gently kissed the top of her head. Sleep. If there was anything, he would talk about it after she woke up. Yesterday, Shi Mengwan would rather believe that she was dreaming. In her dream, Zhang Haoze saved her, and in her dream, Zhang Haoze followed her home. Then, the two of them messed around again. She shook her head. This kind of dream wasn't good. It was a nightmare for her. But she didn't expect that when she opened her eyes, Zhang Haoze was still there. Just like before, the dining table was filled with breakfast. Zhang Haoze sat at the dining table. When he saw her get up, he reached out his hand to her. Eat. After yesterday, Shi Mengwan didn't want to argue with Zhang Haoze over such a small matter. If there was anything, she could wait until she finished her breakfast, and then she could slowly talk to him. I'm going out later. After breakfast, without waiting for Shi Mengwan to lay her cards on the table, Zhang Haoze took the initiative to explain his whereabouts. There are some things at the company that I need to deal with. I'll probably be in Lin City for the next few days. You can also pack your luggage and come with me to Qing City when you're ready. When Shi Mengwan heard this, she put down the milk in her hand. Zhang Haoze, I don't think I promised you that I would go to Qing City, right? Stop fooling around. Zhang Haoze wanted to hold her hand, but Shi Mengwan didn't give him the chance. She stood up. Zhang Haoze, didn't you come all the way here just to do what happened last night? You've done it now, and your goal has been achieved. You can leave now. Wanwan. As for me, I'll never go to Qing City. Give up on that thought. After saying this, she turned around and went back to her room to change her clothes and prepare for work. After taking a few steps, she could feel a certain feeling coming from a certain part of her body. She gritted her teeth and turned around to glare at Zhang Haoze. Would she accompany such a person to Qing City? She wouldn't serve him anymore. He would go wherever he wanted to go. Zhang Haoze sat there without moving. Looking at her figure, the corners of his lips curled up even higher. Zhang Haoze looked at Chen Yongchang in front of him expressionlessly. Chen Yongchang, who was used to liking him in front of him, was completely silent at this moment. There was a hint of flattery in the silence. After a long silence, it was Chin Yongchang who spoke first. Hausa, you haven't been paying much attention to the company these few months. Jean Hausa was silent. He wanted to send Shi Mengwan to the studio in the morning, but he didn't expect to receive a call from Chin Yongchang. He didn't know how he found out about his return to Lin City, so he came looking for him early in the morning. Jean Hausa didn't intend to be too ruthless towards Chin Yongchang. However, this didn't mean that he was a soft persimmon that could be bullied by anyone. Don't you have uncle to deal with the company's matters? I thought you wouldn't want to see me interfere too much. Look at what you're saying. No matter what, you and Fei Fei are childhood sweethearts and engaged fiancés. Isn't it normal for you to interfere in the Chen family's business? Uncle, it's better to be careful with your words. I remember that I've already made it clear to Fei Fei that we've already broken off the engagement. Uncle, if you continue to say that, it will affect Fei Fei's reputation outside. Chin Yongchang looked at Jean Hausa. Even he couldn't help but want to curse. If you really knew that it would affect Fei Fei's reputation, you shouldn't have cancelled the engagement. Hausa, look at what you're saying. Fei Fei is sincere to you. You can't let her down like this, can you? Chen Yongchang endured his unhappiness and once again played the emotional card. He said how they saved Jean Hausa back then. If it weren't for them, Jean Hausa would have died on the streets by now. If Jean Hausa was a person with a conscience, he wouldn't have declined and taken over the Chun Corporation's business. In the past 2 months, Chen Yongchang really felt uncomfortable. When Jean Hausa was in Lin City, he didn't do anything. However, the company's performance had been thriving. Many cases that seemed difficult to solve at that time became easy in Jean Hausa's hands. Ever since he wasn't around for the past 2 months, although the Chun Corporation didn't have any major problems, Chin Yongchang found it more and more difficult. He also understood more and more about Jean Hausa's role and methods. Jean Hausa sat still and patiently waited for Chin Yongchang to finish talking about the past. He supported his chin with one hand. Then, Uncle Chin, what do you want me to do? He didn't call him uncle anymore. Instead, he added his surname. The alienation was already very obvious. Chin Yongchang didn't hear it. Look at what you're saying. Of course, you're going to re-enter the Chun Corporation and take over your original business. Jean Hausa wasn't in a hurry to speak. He just looked at Chin Yongchang and stared straight at his face. He couldn't take it anymore. What did he mean? He finally spoke. Go to the Chun Corporation and take over the Chun Corporation's business. Then, wait for me to make the Chun Corporation bigger and stronger, and then let the real ideal person in your heart take over your business, right? Hausa, what nonsense are you talking about? Is it nonsense? Jean Hausa didn't think so. He stared at Chin Yongchang's face, took out a photo from the drawer, and pushed the photo in front of Chin Yongchang. Seeing the photo, Chin Yongchang's eyes widened. Where did you get this photo? No, how did you know? He did this very secretly and no one knew about it. Other than a trusted aide who had followed him for many years and took care of him from time to time, no one else knew about this matter, let alone others. Jean Hausa looked at Chin Yongchang with a hint of mockery in his eyes. Uncle probably doesn't know, but I don't like to fight battles that I'm not confident in. Since you want me to return to the Chun Corporation, support the Chun Corporation again, and bring it to glory, then I have to make sure what benefits I can get from this place. Right? If there's no benefit, why waste my time? But I didn't expect that the matter that Uncle arranged for me not only didn't have any benefits, but also dug such a big pit for me to jump into. He didn't say anything else. Chin Yongchang became anxious. Jean Hausa, what do you mean? You, Uncle? Jean Hausa picked up the photo with an appreciative look in his eyes. When he put it down, his gaze became quite sharp. Making wedding dresses for others is not a good thing. Maybe there are saints who like it, but I don't. Hausa, not to mention, I've already told Fei Fei that we're going to cancel the wedding. Fei Fei is a very smart girl. She just didn't understand it for a while. After a long time, she will know that her feelings are just the infatuation of a little girl who doesn't understand love. But, Uncle, you're different. Jean Hausa's voice was filled with mockery. and every word seemed to hit Qin Yongchang's heart. "Uncle, you've doted on Fei for so many years. You made Fei think that she was the happiest little princess in the world. But I think she probably never dreamed that she, the Chen family's proudest little princess, wasn't the only one. Because her father, who has always doted on her, had an illegitimate child outside." Zhan Haoze. Qin Yongchang couldn't take it anymore. "You? That's enough. Shut up. Don't say any more. Fei's health isn't good. You don't want her to be agitated. However, you don't want these assets to fall into the hands of others, so you came to me. Because with me, who owes the Chen family a favor, you can ignore me and treat me as a sacrifice. You can use me to make money for you. You can use me to bring the Chen family to the top again. And you, once the Chen family reaches the height you want again, you will think of him as a gift to that bastard of yours who is out there. And poor Fei, she was sacrificed by you just like that." Zhan Haoze's words were very soft. Qin Yongchang's expression was ugly. He wanted to slap the table and scold Zhan Haoze for talking nonsense. But at this moment, the office door was opened with a bang. Chapter 697. Chen Fei's face was pale, and there was sweat on her forehead. She had always been in poor health. At this time, she had one hand on the wall and the other on her heart. She gasped, looking at the two people in front of her, wishing for a moment that she could faint. But her body, which had always been weak, showed no signs of fainting. She looked at Qin Yongchang and then at Zhan Haoze. His gaze was filled with accusation and accusation. You guys? Fei? Qin Yongchang's expression changed. But only for a while. There were some things that his daughter would find out sooner or later. "Dad." Chen Nan panted and walked step by step towards the two people sitting. Is what Brother Hao said true? Even though Qin Yongchang was used to seeing great storms, he still felt a little guilty when he met his daughter's eyes. He didn't say anything. Chen Fei turned to Zhan Haoze for an answer. "Brother Hao, you wouldn't lie to me, would you? Tell me, is what you just said true?" Her face was full of disbelief, but there was still the photo on Zhan Haoze's desk. Chen Fei snatched it over and looked at the person in the photo. Needless to say, there was no need to ask any more. He was a very young man who looked like he was still in university. He looked 50% similar to Qin Yongchang. It was just that he was younger and more flamboyant. Chen Fei felt an unbearable pain in her heart. She thought she would faint again, but she didn't. She put her hands on the desk and stood firm. She stared at Zhan Haoze's face and stubbornly asked for an answer. Zhan Haoze's gaze fell on the photo in her hand. He looked up at Qin Fei. This person wasn't Shi Mengwan. She was weak and sensitive. She could not bear the impending unveiling of the true would I. "Haven't you already seen the photos?" Without saying anything more, Qin Fei staggered and almost fell. She looked at Qin Yongchang again. She suddenly threw the photo away and grabbed Qin Yongchang's shoulder. Why are you doing this? Didn't you say so? You said I was your little princess. You said I was your only daughter. Didn't you say so? You said that everything in the Chen family will be mine in the future. But. She asked several questions in a row, insisting on an answer. Qin Yongchang was shaken by her, but he didn't look at her. After Qin Fei finished shaking, she started to hit Qin Yongchang. "How can you do this? How could you do this? Didn't you say that you loved my mother the most? Didn't you say that you would never marry again after she left? Then who was he? Why does he still exist? Dad, how can you face my mom like this? How could you let me down? How could you do this?" Chen Fei's health was not very good. She did not have much strength at all. As he fought and cried, he went limp. This time, she really fainted. Qin Yongchang's expression finally changed. He quickly picked up Qin Fei. He just didn't know if it was because he was anxious or something else. When he got up, he loosened his grip and almost dropped Qin Fei. Zhan Haoze had been watching coldly from the sidelines. Seeing this, he finally made a move. He stepped forward, picked up Qin Fei, and walked out. Qin Yongchang followed behind him. His voice was sharp and cold. "Zhan Haoze, You're too ruthless. You called Fei here, right? You did it on purpose, didn't you? Zhang Haoze did not answer his question, but he did not deny it either. Qin Yongchang was furious. All right. You're ruthless. That was a beautiful move of yours. Uncle, don't be angry. Zhang Haoze carried Qin Fei into the elevator. Looking at Qin Yongchang, who was flustered and exasperated, the corners of his lips curled up into a cold smile. According to your plan, it's only a matter of time. You had this plan for a long time. I was just helping you advance it. You? Qin Yongchang was speechless. Of course, he did not want to reveal it now. At the very least, he had to wait until they got married. At that time, Zhang Haoze would not ignore Qin Fei. Don't think that you can get away with it. Let me tell you, Fei is your responsibility. Zhang Haoze did not say anything. He carried Qin Fei downstairs. The car was already waiting downstairs, just like before. Qin Yongchang looked at the group of people and swallowed the words he wanted to curse. In the end, he got into the car with a toothache. After the rescue, Qin Fei finally woke up. After she woke up, she didn't want to see Qin Yongchang. She chased Qin Yongchang out, but let Zhang Haoze stay alone. The ward was very quiet. Qin Fei had already smelled enough of the disinfectant since she was young. She was also tired of smelling it, but because her body was not healthy enough, she had to do it from time to time. She stared out of the window in a daze for a full 10 minutes. She didn't speak, and Zhang Haoze didn't speak either. The game had already begun. The engagement had to be broken. In fact, the existence of this engagement was not approved by him. Since it was a mistake, of course he had to correct it. He had patience now. Qin Fei looked at the setting sun outside. She finally retracted her gaze and faced Zhang Haoze. When did you know? Zhang Haoze didn't expect her to ask this. He didn't intend to lie to her. A long time ago. How long ago is a long time ago? When you were 18. At that time, Qin Yongchang had already started to let him enter the company and take over some matters. He knew that Qin Yongchang wanted to groom him as a son-in-law. But later, he subtly discovered some differences. Especially after the Qin Corporation went through that danger, it was clearly caused by Qin Yongchang's distrust of him. Although he turned the tide later and reduced the losses, he also successfully let the Qin Corporation fight a beautiful turnaround. But the seed of doubt was planted in his heart. If Qin Yongchang really wanted him to treat Qin Fei well, or marry Qin Fei in the future, and take care of the Qin Corporation well, he shouldn't have such an attitude. Although he wanted to solve the Zhan family's matter at that time, he wasn't completely unprepared. After investigating for a while, he found out the reason from many clues. After knowing it, it was much simpler. On the surface, Qin Yongchang was indeed a good father and husband. But deep down, he had some traditions. He wanted his son to inherit the family business. His kindness to Qin Fei was real. But his kindness came with conditions. And all of this was seen through by Zhang Haoze. So early? Qin Fei's eyes widened. After understanding the key point, she didn't care about how Zhang Haoze found out. There was only one thought in her mind. Brother Hao, you really don't like me, do you? If he liked her a little, he wouldn't treat her like this. Zhang Haoze was silent. He thought for a moment and told the truth. In my heart, you're my sister. Sister? Qin Fei smiled bitterly, her eyes full of mockery. Yes, I'm your sister, so you don't have to feel sorry for me. You don't have to pity me. You asked me to your company and let me hear such a cruel truth. Brother Hao, you're so cruel. Zhang Haoze didn't deny it. Qin Fei took a deep breath and calmed herself down. Why did you do this? Just to break off the engagement with me? Yes. He knew Shi Mengwan's heart not. If he wanted Qin Fei to publicly break off the engagement in front of everyone in Lin City, he had to make Qin Fei stand up. The current situation was that Shi Mengwan didn't believe his words. But if Qin Fei stood up, Shi Mengwan would believe it. Qin Fei's lips were pursed into a straight line. Her pale face and red eyes would make any man feel pity for her. Brother Hao, do you have a woman you like? Zhang Haoze pursed his lips slightly and didn't deny it. Qin Fei smiled. She seemed to have grown up in an instant and suddenly understood many things. You have someone you like, so you don't like me. The person you like might have misunderstood our relationship, so you want me to explain, right? She looked at Jean Hauser and knew that her guess was true. She smiled bitterly with a bitter expression. A girl who can make you care about her like this must be very beautiful, right? Yes. Jean Hauser nodded. In my heart, she's the most beautiful. The generous praise made Chen Feifei's face turn even paler. She bit her lip and her fingertips trembled. What do you want me to do? You'll announce the news of our breaking off the engagement. You can find any reason. I don't mind. In other words, Chen Feifei could be the reasonable one. She could make up any reason. She looked up at Jean Hauser. Aren't you afraid that if I say you're bad, the girl you like won't like you? No. Jean Hauser's voice was very soft. He thought of Shi Mengwen. No matter what I am, she will like me. Chen Feifei clenched her fists tightly to control herself from crying. Jean Hauser's gentle tone when he talked about that woman was something he had never used on her before. What if I don't agree? You will agree. Jean Hauser looked at her fixedly. Because you're a smart girl. Chen Feifei smiled. Brother Hao, do you know? This is the first time you've praised me. But I'm not happy at all. Jean Hauser was still silent. He did have sibling feelings for Chen Feifei. There was also gratitude. But that was all. Brother Hao, I will agree to you. But I also hope that you can agree to 2 conditions. Chen Feifei's expression seemed to have changed. She was much calmer than before. Don't worry, just 2. And I won't make things difficult for you. Go ahead. Chen Feifei stared at her fingernails. In the shortest time possible, many thoughts had already flashed through her mind. Everything that happened today was a huge blow to her. If possible, she really hoped that she was still the happy little princess of the Chen family. But now, she knew that she couldn't be that carefree little princess anymore. First, I can't agree to break off the engagement with you immediately. Give me some time. Jean Hauser frowned. Chen Feifei looked at him. Brother Hao, if I stand up right now and say that I'll break off the engagement with you, it will be very bad for the company. I need to use your name. 3 months. 3 months was the limit of his patience. Chen Feifei looked at him deeply and finally nodded. Okay, 3 months. The second thing is that I haven't completely mastered the company yet. I also know that I won't be able to master it very quickly in a short period of time. I hope that you can help me, Brother Hao. It doesn't matter if it's you or if you find someone. I don't want the company to fall into the hands of unrelated people. When Chen Feifei said that she didn't want to do it, a flash of gloominess flashed across her face. It was true that the Chen Corporation belonged to Qin Yongchang, but without her mother's power and help, Qin Yongchang wouldn't have been able to develop the company to its current state. The company belonged to Qin Yongchang, and it was also her mother's. She didn't want outsiders to get involved in any way. But she couldn't do it alone. She needed help. Brother Hao, I know you can do it, right? Jean Hauser looked at Chen Feifei. No matter what, they had grown up together. The change in Chen Feifei in front of him was unexpected, but it seemed to be reasonable. After all, after such a major change, it would really be abnormal if the person in front of him was still the same as before. I can. Thank you, Brother Hao. Chen Feifei smiled at him gratefully. There's one more thing. Chen Feifei seemed to realize that she had more than 3 conditions. Her expression was a little awkward, but Jean Hauser didn't mind. Go ahead. Chen Feifei bit her lip. Her expression was conflicted, painful, hesitant, but in the end, it was firm. My father, he's getting old. I think he needs a good rest. Tell me, as his daughter, if I send him to a place with a good environment to spend the rest of his life, others won't be able to accuse me of being unfilial, right? When Jean Hauser heard this, the corners of his lips curled up slightly. Look, this was Chen Feifei. No matter how weak she looked on the outside, she was actually a person with a clear goal inside. He was not surprised or shocked that she had such a thought. Of course. Jean Hauser nodded. Feifei, you're so attentive. Others will only say that you're a good daughter and a very filial daughter. Chen Feifei seemed to heave a sigh of relief. I'm a good daughter. There was a hint of bitterness in her words, as well as something else. Zhang Haoze didn't care anymore. He stood up. It was getting late, and he still wanted to go back and have dinner with Shi Mengwan. You decide the location. After you decide, I'll be responsible for sending uncle to recuperate. Chen Feifei nodded. The moment Zhang Haoze turned around, she called out to him again. Brother Hao? Zhang Haoze turned around. Chen Feifei gritted her teeth, as if she was going all out. Since my father is going to retire, someone has to take care of him. Someone has to take care of him, and my cheap little brother should be the most suitable candidate. Right? She blinked her big eyes and looked at Zhang Haoze. At this moment, she didn't pretend at all. Zhang Haoze smiled. This was a rare smile that he showed in front of Chen Feifei. Of course. No one is more suitable than him. Chen Feifei seemed to be relieved. She looked up at Zhang Haoze and reached out her hand to him. Brother Hao, can you hug me? Just treat it as your final farewell. Zhang Haoze looked at her and gently put his arm around her shoulder. Just as he was about to step back, Chen Feifei suddenly tightened her arms. He felt her trembling. She buried her face in his chest. Brother Hao, I'm really jealous of her. After saying this, she let go of her hand and turned her face away. Brother Hao, you should go quickly. Otherwise, I'll regret it. Zhang Haoze looked at Chen Feifei. He had watched her grow up. Feifei, take care of yourself in the future. I believe that the Chen family will definitely flourish in your hands. Of course. Chen Feifei didn't turn her head, but her eyes were much more determined than when she first woke up. In the past, she only wanted to be in love, but now she knew. But love, it's all fake. If even someone close to you could betray you, what else was real? Only the benefits that were in his hands were real. Zhang Haoze left the ward. As soon as he left, Qin Yongchang came over. What did Feifei say to you? How is she? Qin Yongchang looked in the direction of the ward. He wanted to get closer just now, but he was stopped by Zhang Haoze's bodyguard. Zhang Haoze glanced at Qin Yongchang. Thinking of Qin Feifei's request just now, he felt a little sympathy for Qin Yongchang. In some ways, Qin Feifei was the same kind of person as him. This was also the reason why he could never fall in love with Qin Feifei, even though he had been with Qin Feifei for more than 10 years. Uncle Qin, go and see Feifei. As for what I said to her, let her tell you herself. Zhang Haoze wasn't in the mood to stay any longer. This time, when he returned to Lin City, the matter in front of him was his first priority. Now that it was resolved, his footsteps were a little lighter. After getting into the car, the driver didn't need to ask. He drove directly to Shi Mengwan's apartment. When he entered, he smelled the aroma of food in the room. That familiar smell and familiar environment made Zhang Haoze's expression relax for an instant. He changed his shoes and went straight into the kitchen. Shi Mengwan had already cooked a dish. Just as she took it out and placed it on the cooking table, she felt her waist being hugged. She was shocked and the pot in her hand almost fell to the ground. Zhang Haoze reached out to help her hold it steady, then put it back on the stove. She turned around and glared at him. Don't you know how to make a sound when you walk? You scared me to death, don't you know? Sorry. Zhang Haoze pecked her lips. I scared you. Shi Mengwan looked at him and felt that he seemed especially happy today. Are you happy that you scared me? No. Zhang Haoze couldn't help but peck her lips again. Shi Mengwan reached out and pressed against his chest when he wanted to deepen his kiss. That's enough. I still have to cook. Get out of the way. Don't disturb me. Zhang Haoze didn't let go. Instead, he glanced at the cooking table. What else do you want to cook? Stir-fried beef, and this, spicy and sour shredded potatoes. Shi Mengwan glanced at him as she spoke. Her voice was very soft. I only know how to cook some home-cooked dishes. If you don't like it, you can eat outside. Zhang Haoze glanced at her. It was rare to see her so cute. He reached out and rubbed the top of her hair. Go and rest. I'll do it. Shi Mengwan was stunned for a moment. She watched as Zhang Haoze took off his suit jacket, then unbuttoned the sleeves of his shirt and rolled them up twice. You know how to cook? Shi Mengwan's voice was a little trembling. That wasn't possible, right? She had never seen him cook before, so she thought that he didn't know how to cook. Now that he looked like he was about to make a move, he stood there a little nervously, obviously worried. "You don't believe me?" Chapter 698. Shi Mengwan looked at the handsome face in front of her and nodded without giving him any face. Zhang Haoze narrowed his eyes when he heard her words. His gaze was too dangerous. Shi Mengwan wanted to retreat, but it was already too late. Zhang Haoze pulled her back into his arms. He lowered his head and kissed her until her hands and feet went soft. He pressed his forehead against hers, and his voice was a little hoarse. "All right, let's go outside. I'll cook the remaining 2 dishes." Shi Mengwan's legs were a little soft. She leaned against the wall and looked at Zhang Haoze. She felt that he was a little different. He pushed her gently. "Go. I'll call you later." Even if Shi Mengwan didn't believe him, she could only go out now. She wiped the dining table and went into the kitchen again. She saw that Zhang Haoze was really cooking. "Are you that worried?" Shi Mengwan didn't dare to answer Zhang Haoze's question anymore. She took the bowl and chopsticks and quickly left. She had just put it away. Coincidentally, she received a call. A client had some ideas about the design. Shi Mengwan listened patiently and then wrote them down. After she had made an appointment with the client, she was done. When she turned around, Zhang Haoze had already come out of the kitchen. He was holding 2 dishes in his hand. After putting them away, he looked at her. "Come, let's eat." Shi Mengwan looked at him suspiciously. She took a few steps forward and looked at the dishes on the table. She bought onions to stir-fry beef today. This dish looked simple, but it wasn't easy to make. Beef was a relatively difficult dish to make. If the heat wasn't right, the beef wouldn't be cooked, and the taste wouldn't be good. If the heat was too hot, the beef would be overcooked, and it wouldn't taste good. Shi Mengwan looked at the beef on the table. It looked pretty good in terms of appearance. She sat down and tasted it. She looked at Zhang Haoze in surprise. "When did you learn to cook?" She really couldn't tell at all. Zhang Haoze didn't answer her question. "How does it taste?" "Not bad." It was indeed not bad. Shi Mengwan was more curious about how he learned it. Zhang Haoze didn't say anything. Instead, he scooped a bowl of soup for her and placed it in front of her. Shi Mengwan had done this action many times before. Now that Zhang Haoze was doing the same thing to her, her heart suddenly felt warm. Many thoughts flashed through her mind. Those uncertain thoughts that wanted to resist seemed to have faded again because of the changes caused by Zhang Haoze's return. She couldn't resist him when he was cold and indifferent, and now that he was gentle, she couldn't resist him. What to do? "Shi Mengwan, are you going to sink into oblivion again?" The taste of the food was to her liking, but she didn't really like it. She looked up at him and found that he was also looking at her. Her eyes were gentle, and there was a faint smile on her face. Her heart skipped another beat. She rarely saw Zhang Haoze smiling like this. "Do you have any plans for tomorrow?" Zhang Haoze's voice brought Shi Mengwan back to her senses. She glanced at him. "Yes, there's a design that needs to be fixed tomorrow." She had to change the client's request tomorrow. "Very urgent?" "It's all right. They were all regular customers, so there was no rush." "Then why don't you free a day and let's go play?" "Ah." Shi Mengwan was stunned. "Go play? Where are we going?" "You can think about where you want to go." Shi Mengwan lowered her head to eat. Was he asking her out on a date? This time, wasn't he afraid of meeting someone he knew again? "It's not the weekend, so there shouldn't be many people. So you can think about it." Shi Mengwan originally wanted to say that they should go to the new amusement park that opened this year, but when she met Zhang Haoze's eyes, she said, "Let's go to Mount Qin. I haven't climbed a mountain in a long time." Zhang Haoze's expression didn't change. He nodded lightly. "Then let's climb Mount Qin." He looked like he didn't think of anything, but it was also as if Mount Qin was just an ordinary mountain to him. Shi Mengwan's mood was inexplicably conflicted. Did he forget? Or, at night, Shi Mengwan looked at Zhang Haoze, who was sleeping beside her. She felt that he had changed a lot. "Can't sleep?" Zhang Haoze didn't do anything to her today. He just hugged her to sleep. Shi Mengwan turned over and wanted to sleep with her back to him. Zhang Haoze turned her body around again. His hand was a little unruly on her body. Shi Mengwan instinctively resisted. Stop fooling around. Aren't we going to climb the mountain tomorrow? It's okay. Zhang Haoze kissed her neck. If you can't climb anymore, I'll carry you. In the end, Shi Mengwan couldn't win against Zhang Haoze, so she let him have his way once. However, Zhang Haoze knew when to stop. He only came once and let her go. She couldn't sleep at first, but after being tormented by him like this, she fell asleep very peacefully. Shi Mengwan sat in the car. When she arrived at the foot of Mount Qin, she was still a little dazed. Ever since she got separated from her dear brother here when she was 13, she had never come here again. To her, this was a sad place. She had always regretted it and was very upset. If she hadn't suggested coming here, her dear brother wouldn't have met those bad people, and she wouldn't have been separated from him. Shi Mengwan's emotions were complicated at this moment, but she looked at Zhang Haoze as if nothing had happened. Mount Qin had changed a lot compared to more than 10 years ago. A road had been built at the foot of the mountain, leading straight to the mountainside. This was originally a hilly area, so the mountain wouldn't be too high. Shi Mengwan sat in the car and watched the car go up the mountain. Finally, they stopped in the parking lot halfway up the mountain. When she got out of the car, she looked at the car in front of her and behind her. When she turned to face Zhang Haoze, she was a little conflicted. Can you not let them follow us? It was rare for Zhang Haoze to be so easy to talk to. Shi Mengwan heaved a sigh of relief. The scenery at the top of the mountain was quite good. Shi Mengwan didn't have many memories of Mount Qin. All her memories were of her dear brother being beaten, bleeding, and her loss. Now that her mood was different, she walked up and looked at the beautiful scenery on both sides. She was in the mood to appreciate it. She walked too fast and tripped over a small stone by the side of the road. Her body tilted, and Zhang Haoze quickly hugged her waist to stabilize her body. This scene was a little similar. She turned to look at him, and her eyes were misty. Zhang Haoze looked at her snuggling in his arms and leaned over to kiss her. Shi Mengwan's face turned red for a moment, but Zhang Haoze let go of her at this moment. Let's go. Shi Mengwan lowered her head. She wanted to walk forward quickly, but Zhang Haoze held her hand. She was stunned again and turned to look at him. However, he held her hand and continued walking forward. It was actually a little cold in Lin City during this season, especially when the mountain wind blew. However, Shi Mengwan's hand was held by Zhang Haoze. His hand was very warm, very hot. That kind of heat made Shi Mengwan ignore the coldness in her hand. Other than the big rock that looked like a zither, there were a few other strange rocks in Mount Qin. Although it couldn't be compared to a famous mountain like Mount Huang, the scenery was quite good. The two of them went up the mountain together. Because it wasn't a weekend, there weren't many people. Shi Mengwan's playfulness finally came to an end after she saw the huge zither stone. She took out her phone to take a picture. The huge stone was like a huge zither because of the changes of time. Shi Mengwan's hand touched it, and she turned to look at Zhang Haoze. She almost subconsciously said, "Dear brother, I'll climb up." Shi Mengwan didn't say anything else. More than 10 years ago, Mount Qin hadn't been developed yet. When it wasn't a tourist attraction, no one came here at all. She had once followed her dear brother and climbed up that huge zither. Now that she had grown up and there were tourists passing by the mountain from time to time, she was too embarrassed to climb up. Zhang Haoze held her waist. "Do you want to go up? If you want to go up, I'll carry you up." The stone zither was huge, so it was naturally very tall. Shi Mengwan shook her head. Realizing that she had made a mistake just now, her interest was halved. "No, I'd better be a civilized tourist." Looking at Zhang Haoze, she handed her phone to him. She didn't say anything, but Zhang Haoze understood what she meant. After taking a few photos, Shi Mengwan was about to take her phone back when a couple came up. They were also here to play. When they saw Shi Mengwan and the girl, their eyes lit up. "Beauty, help us take a photo together." Shi Mengwan didn't refuse. She took the other party's phone and took a photo of them. She took a few photos from all angles. When the girl took the phone, she thanked Shi Mengwan profusely. "Thank you, beauty. Your boyfriend is also very handsome. Why don't I take a photo for you guys too?" Before Shi Mengwan could say anything, Zhang Haoze had already handed the phone to the girl. The girl clicked her tongue. There was a hint of surprise in her eyes. The man was handsome and the woman was beautiful. Such a model was also very pleasing to the eye. Shi Mengwan was still a little uncomfortable when Zhang Haoze stood over. Zhang Haoze put his arm around her shoulder. They looked at the camera together. Shi Mengwan subconsciously curled the corners of her lips. At this moment, the hand on her shoulder suddenly exerted a little force. She looked at Zhang Haoze in confusion. At this moment, he leaned over and kissed her on the lips. Shi Mengwan's eyes widened, but she heard the sound of the camera. The scene froze there. Shi Mengwan was a little embarrassed. After the couple left, she quickly left Zhang Haoze's side. Other than this huge rock that looked like a zither, there were also some other rocks of different shapes on Mount Qin. Shi Mengwan didn't have a deep memory of the time she came here when she was young. Her mood was different when she revisited this old place. She turned to look at Zhang Haoze, and he was also looking at her. She wanted to ask him a few times if he was her dear brother, but in the end, there was only silence. Forget it, why ask again? Even if she asked, Zhang Haoze wouldn't admit it. Opening her heart, Shi Mengwan let herself play happily. As for the rest of the things, for now. It was almost noon when they came down from Mount Qin. The two of them got into the car. Shi Mengwan was tired. She stayed in the office every day, and this trip to the mountain was a little tiring. On the other hand, Zhang Haoze. His expression didn't change, and he was calm and composed. It didn't affect him at all. Compared to other people, the difference was really big. When the car passed by the foot of the mountain, Shi Mengwan looked outside. That was the place where she had lost contact with her dear brother. She turned to look at Zhang Haoze, but he didn't react at all. Was he really her dear brother? She couldn't forget those memories and time for so many years, but Zhang Haoze seemed to have completely forgotten. Did he have some accident and lose his memory, or was there some inside story that she didn't know? She thought of Zhang Haoze's current status. It was already different from the past. Perhaps, that experience of being a hooligan wasn't what he wanted. Was that why he avoided talking about it? Was that so? Are you hungry? What do you want to eat for lunch? Zhang Haoze's face enlarged in front of her. Shi Mengwan realized that she was actually staring at Zhang Haoze and felt a little embarrassed. Whatever. Zhang Haoze glanced at her and wasn't annoyed. The car finally stopped at a very famous Western restaurant in the center of Lin City. Shi Mengwan followed Zhang Haoze into the door. Before the two of them could sit down, someone who knew Zhang Haoze came over. When the other party saw Zhang Haoze, he came over to greet him. When Zhang Haoze was exchanging pleasantries with the other party's gaze swept over Shi Mengwan. Shi Mengwan felt a little uncomfortable and wanted to pull her hand back, but she felt Zhang Haoze put his arm around her shoulder and introduced her very calmly, "This is my girlfriend." She was stunned on the spot. Did Zhang Haoze know what he was talking about? She didn't even notice that person's ambiguous gaze. After all, at this stage, everyone who knew Zhang Haoze knew that he had a fiancée. Now, he had another girlfriend. However, looking at Zhang Haoze's gaze, that person wouldn't look for trouble. He left after saying hello. After that person left, Shi Mengwan stood there and looked at Zhang Haoze. "Do you know what you're talking about? You're my girlfriend to begin with." Zhang Haoze looked at her. "I promised you." She wanted a status, so he would give her a status. Shi Mengwan sat there and looked at Zhang Haoze, who was completely different from her memories. She couldn't help but feel her heartbeat quicken. Once again, she was moved by the heart in front of her. Zhang Haoze held her hand. With a focused expression, he said, "Come back to Qing City with me." At this moment, Shi Mengwan couldn't say anything to reject him. She just stared at Zhang Haoze in a daze. She actually had an uncontrollable urge in her heart. She really wanted to throw everything aside and go with him. In the next few days, Zhang Haoze and Shi Mengwan seemed to have returned to that period of time. He was very busy. After all, he had to deal with a lot of work this time and then prepare to go to Qing City. but every night he would definitely have dinner with her. Shi Mingwan's apartment was very small. Zhang Haoze suggested that she change places, but she didn't want to. She wasn't sure how long Zhang Haoze could maintain his current appearance. More importantly, if he wanted to leave one day. What was she going to do? A week passed, and Zhang Haoze seemed to be even busier. Shi Mingwan knew that he was busy, so she didn't plan to disturb him. She also took this opportunity to negotiate with the two OEM factories. Song Seeking Studio could also be considered to have taken a big step forward. Shi Mingwan was in a good mood. Thinking about how her relationship with Zhang Haoze was slowly getting better during this period of time, she suddenly had a sudden impulse and wanted to celebrate with Zhang Haoze. Chen Feifei looked at Zhang Haoze in front of her. After not seeing him for a week, the person in front of her seemed to have changed again. There was still a cold look in his eyes, but there was a hint of gentleness. Needless to say, this must be the power of love. She was really jealous of the woman who had Zhang Haoze's heart. However, she knew better than anyone what the most important thing was right now. "Brother Hao, I'm sorry. It seems that I'll have to trouble you tomorrow." Chen Feifei thought that she was a very filial daughter. Therefore, she spent a lot of effort on Qin Yongchang's retirement home. In the end, she finally chose a small town in Canada. The environment was good, and the people were simple. Everything could be said to be perfect. The only imperfection now was that Qin Yongchang didn't want to go. These few days, because of some of her and Zhang Haoze's actions, he had been losing his temper at home. "You're welcome. I will naturally do what I promised you." It was very simple to bring Qin Yongchang onto the plane. It wasn't too difficult for Qin Yongchang to stay abroad for the rest of his life. There was a hint of mockery in Chen Feifei's eyes. "Do you know? My dad has been scolding me at home for the past few days." She had been in the company for the past few months, so she had some understanding of the company. It would still take time for her to completely snatch the company back into her hands. Chen Yongchang wanted to resist, but with Zhang Haoze around, he was greatly suppressed. These few days, Chen Yongchang had been scolding people at home. Of course, he wasn't only scolding Chen Feifei, but also Zhang Haoze. "He said that I have no conscience and that you're an ingrate. I think it's really funny. He was the one who said that everything in the Chen family would be mine in the future. Why is he so angry now that I just got it in advance?" Zhang Haoze couldn't answer her question. Chen Feifei smiled. "Forget it. Let's not talk about him. Brother Hao, let's have lunch together." Before Zhang Haoze rejected her, Chen Feifei raised her index finger. "Don't be in a hurry to reject me. That old fox from Deshang Corporation has arranged to meet at noon today. You know that he has always been lustful. I'm afraid I'll suffer a loss in his hands. Anyway, you've helped me so much. I think you don't mind going to a meal with me, right?" She leaned forward a little. "If I can settle this deal with Deshang ahead of time, I can also establish my authority in the company ahead of time. Maybe I'll come out earlier to break off the engagement." Zhang Haoze was speechless, but that old fox, Deshang, did not have a good reputation. However, he had some connections behind him. There were benefits to cooperating with him, but this person had a bad reputation. "Let's go." Even if Chen Feifei didn't say it, he would still help with these small favors. "Thank you, Brother Hao. You're the best." Chen Feifei smiled innocently, looking the same as many years ago. Only they themselves knew that Chen Feifei's smile was completely different. After going downstairs, before Chen Feifei got into the car, she hooked her arm around Zhang Haoze's. "Brother Hao, I've wronged you. Act as a couple with me. Don't worry. Just this once. I promise I won't trouble you next time." When she gained a foothold in the Chen Corporation, she really didn't need Zhang Haoze to appear. She just needed to put on a show. Zhang Haoze glanced at her. At this point, he seemed to be a little helpless. "I didn't say I wouldn't help you." "Thank you very much." The two of them got into the car together and headed to the place where Chen Feifei had agreed to meet. Zhang Haoze instructed someone to drive. What he didn't expect was that Shi Mingwan, who was across the street and wanted to explain things to Zhang Haoze, happened to see the scene of Zhang Haoze and Chen Feifei leaving arm in arm when she saw him come out. With a cold face, She watched John Hauser bring Chen Feifei into the car with a doting expression. She also saw Chen Feifei's overly bright smile. That scene looked like a loving and affectionate couple. Shi Mengwan suddenly felt that all the words of love she had heard yesterday had turned into a joke. She sat in the car and gripped the steering wheel tightly. There was no trace of emotion in her eyes. Shi Mengwan watched as the shocking motorcade left the building of Jean Hauser's company. She also got into the car and started the car to leave. However, this time, she wasn't going back to the studio. Instead, she was going home. That day, not only did Jean Hauser accompany Chen Feifei to complete the Desheng project, he also made a trip to the Chen Corporation. Appearing with Chen Feifei could be considered as establishing his prestige. After so many days in the Chen Corporation, his prestige wasn't much inferior to Chen Yongchang's. Many people had always regarded him as the future head of the Chen Corporation. Now that Chen Yongchang said that he was not feeling well and needed to recuperate, the person who took over was Chen Feifei. Everyone was a little worried, but when they saw Jean Hauser, there was nothing to worry about. After all, with Jean Hauser around, the Chen Corporation would only get better and better. Chen Feifei looked at the way those people looked at Jean Hauser and clicked her tongue. Big brother Hao, your existence is like a great Buddha. With you around, these people won't dare to look down on me. Thank you for supporting me. You're welcome. Jean Hauser was expressionless. I'm just returning your favor. Tisk, you've returned the favor of saving my life just like that. Why do I feel like I'm at a loss? Chen Feifei couldn't be bothered to hide herself in front of Jean Hauser now. Jean Hauser glanced at her. Or, would you like uncle to stay? No need. Chen Feifei didn't dare to tease him anymore. All right. I promise you we're even. Jean Hauser entered her office and looked at some of the recent cases of the Chen Corporation. He then roughly told Chen Feifei some things to pay attention to. After all, Chen Feifei studied business, so she took over these things very quickly. He believed that even if he returned to Qing City in 2 days, it wouldn't affect him much. He spent the entire afternoon at the Chen Corporation. He rejected Chen Feifei's suggestion to have dinner together. He was going to have dinner with Shi Mengwan. You're so anxious to see your sweetheart. I really want to meet her. Jean Hauser glanced at her and didn't respond. Before everything was completely stable, he didn't want Shi Mengwan to appear in front of Chen Feifei. After leaving the Chen Corporation, he went straight back to Shi Mengwan's apartment, but he found that she wasn't at home. Jean Hauser was stunned for a moment. At this time, she should have already returned from the studio. Looking at the empty house, he took out his phone and made a call. Shi Mengwan didn't pick up his call. He called again, but no one picked up. Later, Shi Mengwan's phone was turned off. Holding his phone, he looked at the living room in front of him in a daze. What was Shi Mengwan doing? 10 minutes later, Jean Hauser's men brought news. Shi Mengwan had gone home. Go home? Why was she going home at this time? Chapter 699. When Shi Mengwan arrived home, it was almost evening. Father Shi went to the field to pick vegetables. Mother Shi was cooking in the kitchen. Shi Mingru, who was already in the 2nd year of middle school, was doing her homework in her room when she heard the sound of the car and ran out. Sister? Why you back? It wasn't the new year, so Shi Mengwan rarely went home. It's nothing. I missed you guys. Shi Mengwan smiled. Although she came back in a hurry, she still had gifts. She took out a big box from the back seat of the car and handed it to Shi Mingru. Didn't you say that the tablet had a black screen last time? I bought you a new one. Wow, sister, you're so nice. Shi Mingru jumped up on her tiptoes and kissed Shi Mengwan. You just spoil her. Mother Shi heard the sound and came out of the kitchen. A student girl has already used up 2 tablets. No one else uses tablets. Not only does she have a computer, but she also has a tablet and a phone. Don't spoil her. Don't worry. I won't spoil her. Shi Mengwan rubbed her sister's hair. Mom, you're watching over her. Are you spoiling her just because she bought some electronic products? You. Mother Shi wanted to say something else, but Shi Mengwan took out a bigger box from behind. Mom, this is for you. Last time, I heard from Ching Sang that this physical therapy device sold very well in their hospital. It's also very useful. Your shoulder always hurts. Try this. Why waste this money? How painful can it be? Just bear with it and it'll pass. Mom, don't worry about money. Shi Mengwan moved the other gifts out of the car. Our studio's business has been very good recently. It's quite busy. Don't worry, your daughter can make money. You're still back if you're busy? Mother sure took the gifts. Didn't you just come back for the Mid-Autumn Festival? You don't have to come back anymore. You're still running back and forth. Mom, are you chasing me away? Shi Mengwan pretended to get into the car as she spoke. All right, I've finished delivering the things. I'm leaving. You child. Mother sure patted her on the body. Let's go. I'll ask your dad to buy 2 more vegetables. We'll have more food tonight. Shi Mengwan reached out and hugged Mother Shi. Because she saw Zhang Haoze and Chen Feifei unhappy together, no matter how unhappy they were along the way, she calmed down. She shouldn't be surprised, nor should she be surprised. Zhang Haoze lied to her time and time again, but she was stupid and believed him time and time again. This time, there really wouldn't be a second time. She would never trust him again. Looking at the setting sun, Shi Mengwan made up her mind. When Father Shi came back, he was very happy to see Shi Mengwan. The family ate happily. Shi Mengwan sat and chatted with her parents for a while. Then, she went to check on Shi Mingru's homework. Actually, there was nothing much to check. Shi Mingru's results were pretty good, and she had always been among the best. She even planned to go to university in Lin City in the future so that she could have a companion. After taking a shower, Shi Mengwan returned to her room, but she couldn't fall asleep. She was in a bad mood. He glanced at his phone. There were a few missed calls. Later, she turned off her phone, but Zhang Haoze still called her. She didn't understand why he would call her. He already had Chen Feifei. Why did he have to provoke him? She had made up her mind to give up many times, but every time, she would waver under Zhang Haoze's domineering and pestering. Every time she made an oath, it would be broken by Zhang Haoze in the end. It was really enough. This time, she really wouldn't believe him again. She wouldn't believe a single word he said anymore. Shi Mengwan thought this in her heart when she blocked Zhang Haoze's number. Shi Mengwan blocked Zhang Haoze's number, but she couldn't let herself fall asleep smoothly. Just as she was about to fall asleep, her phone rang. The ringing sound of the phone that kept disturbing her dreams forced Shi Mengwan to open her eyes. She glanced at the screen. She didn't recognize the number. She pressed it. After a while, her phone rang again. She pressed it again. After a while, it rang again. She pressed it again. After the 5th time, Shi Mengwan finally couldn't help but pick up the phone. Didn't your mother tell you that it's very impolite to call someone in the middle of the night? My mother passed away a long time ago. The voice on the other end instantly woke Shi Mengwan up. She looked at the phone in her palm. It was an unfamiliar number, but the voice was indeed Zhang Haoze's. She closed her eyes and was about to hang up. I'm at your door. Zhang Haoze's next sentence made her stop. Right now, I'm at your door. It's not the apartment in Lin City, it's your hometown. Qingfeng Town. Shi Mengwan blinked. For a moment, she thought she was hallucinating. Zhang Haoze, are you crazy? Come out. I don't want to. Shi Mengwan's voice was full of anger. Zhang Haoze, that's enough. Let me tell you we're done. There's no future and there's no breakup. Anyway, we've never been on good terms. As she spoke, she hung up the phone. Afraid that Zhang Haoze would call again, she swiped her hand and prepared to turn off her phone. At this moment, a message popped up. Perhaps, you want me to visit your parents? Crazy. Shi Mengwan looked at the message and stopped turning off her phone. Was Zhang Haoze crazy? He wanted to visit her parents at this time? Did he think the matter wasn't big enough? While she was angry, the phone on the other end rang again. Looking at the flashing number, Shi Mengwan picked it up gloomily. Zhang Haoze, that's enough. What do you want? We didn't take any precautions yesterday. You might be pregnant. Do you want me to tell your parents about this? Are you crazy? Shi Mingwan's face was red. Half of it was angry, and the other half was shy. Jean Hauser still remembered to take precautions. But the last time yesterday, there weren't enough condoms. She wanted to stop it, but it was too late. She could only be glad that it was a safe period. But Shi Mingwan didn't believe in a safe period even once. One had to know that Su Qingsang was a doctor in the obstetrics and gynecology department. She had told her a lot about all kinds of accidental pregnancies in their hospital. Many of them thought that it was a safe period. But in Su Qingsang's words, a safe period wasn't safe either. It still depended on the person. Now, Jean Hauser, that bastard, actually used this to threaten her? How could she dare to let him talk nonsense in front of her parents? It wasn't like she didn't want to live anymore. Jean Hauser, don't go too far. 5 minutes. Jean Hauser said these 3 words and hung up the phone. Shi Mingwan was very angry. She only felt that her stomach was hurting now. She looked out of the window. The sky was gloomy, and it seemed like it was going to rain. She gritted her teeth, got up helplessly, put on her coat and went downstairs. It was almost midnight, and Father Shi and Mother Shi were both asleep. Shi Mingru's room was at the other end of the corridor, while Mother Shi and the others' rooms were downstairs. This kind of self-built house usually had a large hall outside. Shi Mingwan could only be glad that she didn't have to be afraid of waking her parents up. Before leaving, she didn't know if it was because of some strange coincidence or something else, but she picked up her bag and car keys. When she went outside, the cold wind that hit her face made her stagger. After stabilizing her body, she saw a row of luxury cars lining up on the side of the road diagonally opposite the Shi family's courtyard. If anyone didn't wake up now and saw so many luxury cars in such a small town, they would probably be shocked. Shi Mingwan closed her eyes and had no choice but to get into the car in the middle. It was much warmer inside the car than outside. Shi Mingwan didn't plan to stay for long. It was warm inside the car, and the lights above her head made her feel a little warm. But that was all. Jean Hauser, what exactly do you want? She didn't come out because she thought that she was afraid of him or anything. She was just worried about her parents' thoughts and feelings. If Jean Hauser thought that she was afraid of him, then he was really wrong. To her surprise, Jean Hauser didn't seem to be angry. His tone was still gentle. Why didn't you tell me when you went home? I called you and you didn't answer. I was very worried about you. Ignoring the concern in his words, Shi Mingwan glared at the person in front of her. Tell you? Why should I tell you? Who are you to me? Where I go and what I do doesn't seem to have anything to do with you, right? Her words today were very blunt, and her attitude was very wrong. Jean Hauser wasn't sure what happened to Shi Mingwan. They had been getting along well these few days, so he thought that her attitude would soften. If I remember correctly, I seem to be your boyfriend, right? So now she was saying that what she did had nothing to do with him? Could it really have nothing to do with him? Really? Then let's break up now. Anyway, he couldn't be her boyfriend alone, so she didn't want him. Jean Hauser narrowed his eyes slightly. He finally realized that something was wrong. What happened? She rushed home. Could it be that her grandmother was forcing her to marry again, or asking her to give in and agree to some conditions? What happened? Shi Mingwan found it funny. This person actually had the nerve to ask her what happened? Shouldn't he be the one who should be telling this sentence the most? She wanted to stab him a few times, but Shi Mingwan held it in. They had talked too much about Chen Feifei. Her questions had never been answered positively. The following answers. There were. But behind those answers, she would always lose some of herself. She catered to him and accepted everything he gave her. Now, she didn't want it anymore. What could happen to me? I'm just tired of it. He wasn't the only one who would play two-timing outside. If she was given a chance, she would prove it to him. Shi Mingwan, didn't need to hang herself on him. Jean Hauser narrowed his eyes and looked at Shi Mingwan's expression seriously. He was surprised to find that what she said was actually true. Tired of it? He narrowed his eyes and listened to Shi Mingwan's rather heartless words. He tightened his grip on her hand, and his gaze returned to its previous gloominess. Do you know what you're talking about? Of course I know. Shi Mingwan retracted her hand and took a step back. Jean Hauser, Please stay away from me. We're not suitable. She reached out to pull the car door, but found that she couldn't open it at all. At the same time, Jean Hauser actually asked someone to start the car. Shi Mengwan gritted her teeth and turned to face Jean Hauser. Jean Hauser, that's enough. Stop the car, do you hear me? She was very angry. She reached out to pull the car door, but the car door didn't move at all. Shi Mengwan was furious. She raised her foot and kicked the car door. Unfortunately, she was thin and weak, so she couldn't make the car door move at all. Shi Mengwan's sharp temper rose to her head at this moment. She used both her feet to kick the car door, not caring if she would hurt her feet. Jean Hauser hugged her waist and gestured for the driver to stop the car. The moment the car stopped, Shi Mengwan bit down on his shoulder. In the late autumn weather, she wore a lot of clothes. To Jean Hauser, this strength was no different from scratching an itch. He let her bite until she didn't have the strength to bite anymore. He lifted her body and lifted it up. Drive. Jean Hauser. Shi Mengwan was angry. He didn't listen to her at all, did he? Before the car started, Jean Hauser looked at her and took away the bag in her hand. He took out the car keys from inside. He gave an order, and soon, someone came over and took the car keys. Shi Mengwan was angry in her heart. Jean Hauser, don't be too shameless. If you really talk nonsense in front of my parents, at most, we'll just fight to the death. You can try. You came out so late and brought your bag. Didn't you just want to leave? Shi Mengwan was extremely angry. Of course she wanted to leave. She would rather go back to Lin City and quarrel with Jean Hauser slowly than let Mother Shi see Jean Hauser appear. It wasn't easy for Mother Shi to calm down during this period of time. She no longer insisted on introducing her to a blind date. If she saw Jean Hauser appear again, it was hard to say if Mother Shi would find someone to go on a blind date with her again. What are you angry about? Jean Hauser really didn't understand. They had been fine during this period of time. She had also started to accept him again. What was she doing today? Shi Mengwan didn't want to talk to him. It was already very late at this time. She turned around and leaned against the back of the chair with her back facing Jean Hauser. She closed her eyes. She used this action to silently resist. She wouldn't answer his question, much less be with him. Jean Hauser looked at her face. It was rare that he didn't force her to speak like he did in the past. He just stared at Shi Mengwan's face. Shi Mengwan felt Jean Hauser's gaze and closed her eyes even more tightly. However, at first, she pretended to be asleep, but later on, she really fell asleep. No matter what, she was someone who had been working all day and driving for half a day. In a daze, she really fell asleep. When Shi Mengwan woke up, she was still woken up by the ringing of her phone. On the other end of the phone, Mother Shi was full of anxiety. Wan, where did you go? Why is your car gone? And where are you? Where did you drive to so early in the morning? Where could she drive to so early in the morning? Shi Mengwan originally wanted to deny it, but she suddenly remembered Jean Hauser's appearance yesterday. She was shocked and quickly woke up. She explained to Mother Shi that something happened at the factory last night, so she returned to Lin City overnight. Although Mother Shi believed this excuse, she scolded her again. She felt that she didn't care about her health and that staying up late to drive was very tiring. But now that she was sure that she was fine, Mother Shi said a few more words to her and hung up. Shi Mengwan hung up the phone and suddenly realized something. The environment in front of her wasn't in her apartment in Lin City. Chapter 700. The unfamiliar environment in front of her wasn't her apartment. Shi Mengwan felt a headache coming on. She sat up and looked at the environment in front of her. This room was very big. It was almost as big as her small apartment. Other than the bed, there was also a sofa and an armchair on the other side. Near the balcony, there were elegant and simple beige curtains. The entire style was European palace style, but it didn't make people feel comfortable. She got out of bed and found that it wasn't her shoes by the bed, but a pair of extremely comfortable indoor slippers. She put on them and walked towards the balcony. When she opened the curtains, she was almost shocked. The huge man-made lake was in front of her. The green in front of her was like a park. but it looked much more elegant than a park. She looked to the side and saw that it was all villa areas. She frowned. She was friends with Su Qing-sang, and she would sometimes attend some clients' dinner parties. She had a certain understanding of some famous villa areas in Lin City. However, the neighborhood in front of her was very unfamiliar to her. She stood for a while and remembered that the last person she saw was Jean Hauze. She was about to call Jean Hauze. She didn't know that Jean Hauze was standing at the door. Where is this? Why am I here? How did he bring her here? No, it should be said, how did she appear here without realizing it? My house. Jean Hauze walked towards her. The morning light shone in from the direction of the balcony. The person in front of her was tall and handsome. The next sentence almost made Shi Mengwan's legs go limp. This is my home in Qing City. Shi Mengwan staggered and almost couldn't stand. Jean Hauze quickly supported her at this moment. For Shi Mengwan, who had just woken up, she didn't have much energy to resist him. Her lips moved, and a gloomy look flashed across her eyes. You, who agreed to you? Who agreed to you that I was coming to Qing City? Jean Hauze looked at the anger on her face. He didn't seem to understand why she was so angry. I told you that I wanted to bring you to Qing City. Shi Mengwan was so angry that she almost laughed. You said you wanted me to come, so I came? She said this and walked past Jean Hauze to walk out. Jean Hauze grabbed her arm. Are you angry? But. Do you think I can't be angry? Do you think I have no reason to be angry at you for taking me to another city or another place without my consent? Jean Hauze was stunned for a moment. Seeing the anger on Shi Mengwan's face, he nodded. I'm sorry. It's my fault I didn't ask for your permission. But I still have things to deal with here, and I want to be with you, so I used the wrong method. He lowered his stance a little. Shi Mengwan wasn't used to seeing Jean Hauze like this. In the past, she would have wanted to question him, but today, she was too lazy to even do so. I accept your apology, so can I leave now? Jean Hauze didn't expect Shi Mengwan to have such a reaction. Shi Mengwan had already walked outside. When she reached the door, he tried to run after her. Shi Mengwan suddenly stopped in her tracks and turned back. Where is my bag? And my car? It's downstairs. I've asked someone to park the car in front of your apartment. After hearing this, Shi Mengwan didn't ask any more questions. She turned around and continued to walk out. Jean Hauze followed behind her. Shi Mengwan took a few steps and realized that there was no way out. She turned around and looked at Jean Hauze, who was following behind her. She didn't know if it was her imagination, but she saw a faint smile in his eyes. The stairs are this way. Jean Hauze explained very kindly. Shi Mengwan snorted and walked past him in the opposite direction. Her angry look made Jean Hauze decide not to tell her that the place where she had walked to the end of the road was actually the elevator. As long as she pressed the button on the side, the elevator would come up. Instead, he chose to follow behind her. Shi Mengwan was wearing cotton slippers, so she naturally couldn't walk fast. She didn't know if the air conditioner was turned on, but the warm wind in this season made her feel a little hot. The stairs were indeed on the other side. After going downstairs, she wasn't in the mood to appreciate the decorations here. She looked around and immediately saw her bag on the sofa. She went forward to pick it up and continued walking outside. After taking 2 steps, she realized that the shoes on her feet were wrong. She had no choice but to turn around and look at Jean Hauze. Where are my shoes? In the shoe cabinet at the entrance, Jean Hauze said. Shi Mengwan nodded and went forward to open the shoe cabinet. Sure enough, she found her shoes and put them on. She reached out and opened the door. The moment the door opened, the cold wind that blew into her face made Shi Mengwan quickly and instinctively close the door. She turned around and looked at Jean Hauze. Qing City is in the north? She always heard him say that he wanted her to accompany him back to Qing City, but she really hadn't paid attention to where Qing City was. She looked at her body. Before she went out yesterday, she had taken a light woolen coat, but now that she had just woken up, she didn't know where the coat was. She was only wearing a thin sweater, so she was really cold now. She glared at Jean Hauze and gritted her teeth for some reason. Mr. Jean, can I ask how I got in yesterday? Jean Hausa looked at the anger on her face and didn't seem to mind. I carried you in. You were sleeping a little soundly. When I got out of the car, I covered you with a blanket. Of course, he wouldn't say that he got into the car directly after getting off the plane. There was a heater in the car, and they came directly from the underground garage, so it was normal for her not to feel cold. Shi Mengwan nodded. Her expression was very conflicted and a little angry. Good, very good. Great. In such a situation, if she didn't want to get sick from the cold, she had to ask Jean Hausa. You don't have to leave in a hurry. There are many fun places in Qing City. You can play for 2 days before you leave. Is this considered a forced purchase? Shi Mengwan was angry. Jean Hausa put his arm around her waist. This is a sincere invitation. Shi Mengwan raised her foot and was about to step on the back of his foot. However, she was wearing cotton slippers, so no matter how hard she tried, she didn't cause any harm to Jean Hausa's foot. She was angry and turned around, not wanting to talk to him. However, her stomach made a very uncooperative sound, and Shi Mengwan's face instantly turned red. Let's go. Let's eat. Jean Hausa brought her in the direction of the dining room. Previously, Shi Mengwan was so focused on leaving that she didn't notice at all. Only now did she realize that there was someone else in the house. After entering the dining room, she realized that not only was the room big, but the dining room was also big. The long white dining table had a lot of exquisite food placed in the middle. It was placed on an exquisite plate. Jean Hausa held Shi Mengwan's hand and sat down at the other end of the dining table. There are some good places of interest in Qing City. After dinner, we can… Didn't you say that you have a lot of work to deal with? Shi Mengwan's expression was a little cold. Since that's the case, then you should go deal with your work first. Jean Hausa wasn't angry even though she had brushed him off. He was about to explain that he could spare a day when Tang Hua rushed in from outside. When he saw that Shi Mengwan was also there, he swallowed back the words he was about to say. President Jean, Miss Shi. Shi Mengwan knew Tang Hua. This person had been with Jean Hausa for an unknown period of time. She nodded as a greeting and watched Jean Hausa get up. You eat first. I have something to do here. I'll take you out to play in the afternoon. Shi Mengwan didn't mind when she could go out at all. Now, she was so happy that she couldn't see Jean Hausa. Jean Hausa was busy until it was almost evening before he finished. Shi Mengwan didn't mind. She was thinking about some questions. For example, how could she leave this place and how could she have a showdown with Jean Hausa? Before she could think clearly, Jean Hausa had already finished his work. The sky gradually darkened. When Jean Hausa appeared in front of Shi Mengwan again, Shi Mengwan had just finished scrolling through her WeChat moments. Looking at the pair of long legs in front of her, she raised her head. Jean Hausa was looking at him. Come on, let's go out to eat. Go out to eat. Shi Mengwan didn't want to move. It's very cold outside. Actually, it wasn't particularly cold. It wasn't the coldest time in Qing City yet. It was just that Shi Mengwan had just flown over from the south, so she felt that it was especially cold here. Jean Hausa held her hand, and only then did she realize that there was a fitting room on the other side of the room. Pulling open the door of one of the cabinets, he saw that it was filled with women's clothing. Everything was new, and the tags were still there. There were clothes for all seasons of the year. At the bottom, there were different kinds of shoes. Seeing so many women's clothes, Shi Mengwan turned her head to look at him. Her slightly furrowed brows carried some complicated emotions. Although these clothes were all her measurements, they were all standard sizes. So, aren't we going out to eat? Take a coat and let's go. Shi Mengwan couldn't muster up much interest, but Jean Hausa seemed to be in a good mood. Seeing that she didn't make a move, he took the initiative to pick out a khaki-colored woolen coat and handed it to her. This one's not bad. Although Shi Mengwan wasn't very satisfied, she still put on the clothes. She found a pair of boots and put them on. Shi Mengwan followed Jean Hausa out of the door. After getting into the car, Shi Mengwan wasn't in a good mood. Jean Hausa, on the other hand, looked very relaxed. He reached out to hold her hand. Sorry, Tang Hua had something to talk to me about. I forgot the time and didn't accompany you. Are you angry? Shi Mengwan wasn't angry. She pulled back her hand, and Zhang Haoze went to hold her hand again. She avoided him again. This time, she accidentally touched a button and the car window rolled down. The cold wind blew, and Shi Mengwan closed the car window again. The car happened to make a turn at this time, so she didn't notice that in a villa next to her, Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao had just gotten out of the car. Su Qingsang happened to see her sitting in the car window and thought that her eyes were playing tricks on her. Zhang Haoze's car circled around the city of Qing City. He seemed to be in a good mood today. He sat in the car and briefly introduced some of the scenic spots in Qing City to Shi Mengwan, as well as places to go. Unfortunately, Shi Mengwan wanted to tell him the truth and break up, so she was in low spirits and couldn't muster up any energy. In the end, Zhang Haoze thought that she was hungry, so he brought her to a place that was said to be very delicious roasted mutton. It was a typical northern courtyard house, but it was cleverly divided into private rooms. Zhang Haoze and Shi Mengwan were brought into the private room and sat down. Not long after they ordered, Zhang Haoze's phone rang. He glanced at Shi Mengwan and went out to answer the call. He didn't expect that as soon as he walked out, he would meet Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao, who had also come because of the fame. President Zhang? President Hua. The two men stood at the door of the private room and greeted each other. Shi Mengwan saw Su Qingsang at first glance just now. She was quite frightened and instinctively hid in the bathroom in the private room. Zhang Haoze was still chatting with Hua Jinyao outside. Shi Mengwan didn't care about the things that the men talked about at all. She only cared if Zhang Haoze would suddenly go crazy and ask them to come in for dinner. If Su Qingsang saw her, it would really be embarrassing. Fortunately, Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao didn't meet any acquaintances here. They were just here to play. After greeting each other, Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao went to the backyard to watch them roast the whole lamb. Shi Mengwan only felt that her back was covered in sweat. When Zhang Haoze entered the door, her face inevitably became a little gloomy. "I want to leave." Her voice was a little anxious. Looking at Zhang Haoze, she didn't have any intention of staying at all. "The lamb is already being roasted. It'll be ready soon." Zhang Haoze sat down beside her and looked at her pale face. Ever since he came to look for her again this time, it was rare for him to have the intention to tease her. "Are you going out now because you want to meet that good friend of yours?" "Zhang Haoze?" Su Qingsang hadn't returned to the private room yet. "Your good friend is visiting right now. If you go out now, I won't object, but I can't guarantee that you'll coincidentally meet her." Shi Mengwan's expression was very ugly. She glared at Zhang Haoze in front of her, wishing that she could stare a hole in his body. Zhang Haoze squeezed her hand again. "If you want to see her, it's easy. I can ask President Hua to bring her along. It'll be more lively with more people, don't you think?" It was his head. Shi Mengwan turned her face away. She didn't want to see this bastard at all. Naturally, the meal was a little tasteless. Shi Mengwan saw the picture of the roasted lamb posted by Su Qingsang on her WeChat moments. She had even circled her name on it, saying that the next time she came, she could treat her to a good taste. Shi Mengwan finally liked it and threw her phone to the side. That night, Zhang Haoze said that he wanted to take her to the hot spring. Shi Mengwan wasn't in the mood at all. "Zhang Haoze, when do you plan to let me go? Why are you in such a hurry? I said that there are many places worth visiting in Qing City. There's even a hot spring here. It's very comfortable to soak in a hot spring in this kind of weather. I'll get someone to arrange it tomorrow." How could Shi Mengwan still be in the mood to soak in a hot spring? She was in a hurry to return to Lin City now. At this moment, Zhang Haoze hugged her waist. "Pregnant women can't soak in a hot spring, so don't worry. It's unlikely that your good friend, Mrs. Hua, will meet you. If I return to Lin City, it's even more unlikely that she'll meet me." Shi Mengwan's words were a little mocking. Zhang Haoze acted as if he didn't hear her. He didn't think that something was wrong with Shi Mengwan because he saw her with Chen Feifei. He only thought that the reason why she was unhappy was because he brought her to Qing City without her consent, so she was throwing a tantrum. Seeing that she couldn't get through to him, Shi Mengwan decided not to say anything. She opened the door like a thief and called the waiter to confirm that Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao were in their own private room. Then she left in a hurry. Shi Mengwan didn't expect that what she was afraid of would come true. The more she didn't want to meet Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao, the more she would meet them. When she was pulled out of the door by Zhan Haoze and brought to the famous ancient city of Qing City, she actually met Su Qingsang again. She was a fashion designer, so she didn't have a fanatic interest in clothing stores. However, when it came to ethnic clothing stores with unique styles, they had no resistance. Therefore, along the way, even though she didn't want to be with Zhan Haoze at all, when she saw the ethnic clothing store in front of her, she still couldn't help but lift her foot and walk in. Her teacher had once told them that a good fashion design not only needed to be innovative, but also needed to be passed down. What was national was the world, and the characteristics of a nation also needed to be passed down. Shi Mengwan looked at the exquisite, handmade clothes and liked them very much. Zhan Haoze said at the right time, "If you like them, you can try them on." "Yes, miss, you have such a good figure. You will definitely look good in our clothes." The shop assistant said flattering words at the right time. Seeing that Shi Mengwan stood still, she added, "The clothes in our store usually only have one pair of each color and size. Although it's pretty much the same ethnic style, we've done our own processing and processing. Miss, please try them on." It wasn't the peak season for tourism, so there weren't many people. Shi Mengwan looked at the obvious Uyghur costume and finally nodded. She didn't expect that when she went in to try on the clothes, it would be such a coincidence. Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao just happened to enter the store. Speaking of which, Su Qingsang entered this store because of her. Although her belly was big and she couldn't wear it, Shi Mengwan could. Su Qingsang just wanted to buy a gift for Shi Mengwan. But she didn't expect to meet Zhan Haoze. Zhan Haoze also didn't expect that they and Hua Jinyao would meet in such a big city with a population of tens of millions. They were really fated. Hua Jinyao looked at him with a probing gaze. Zhan Haoze was quite calm and even started to chat with Hua Jinyao again. "President Zhan, are you alone?" "No, I'm with my girlfriend." Zhan Haoze openly admitted Shi Mengwan's identity. Of course, he didn't miss the flash of dissatisfaction in Su Qingsang's eyes. Su Qingsang naturally didn't like Zhan Haoze's behavior. One had to know that Zhan Haoze already had Chen Feifei as his fiancée, but now he had another girlfriend. She was willing to bet that his girlfriend was definitely not Chen Feifei. Su Qingsang wasn't interested in meddling in other people's business. She turned around, took a dress that she thought was suitable for Shi Mengwan, and went to the fitting room. On the other end, the shop assistant took the initiative to ask because Shi Mengwan hadn't come out. Zhan Haoze looked at Hua Jinyao, who had been staring at him curiously, and walked into the fitting room under the shop assistant's gaze. Chapter 701. Hearing Su Qingsang's voice outside, Shi Mengwan, who had already changed into a set of ethnic clothes, didn't have the courage to walk out at all. She never expected that she would meet Su Qingsang when Zhan Haoze dragged her out to the night market in the ancient city because she was in a bad mood. She didn't go out, and the shop assistant even started to ask her if she was feeling unwell. Could she be comfortable? Just yesterday, she heard Zhan Haoze call Chen Feifei. Chen Yongchang had already been sent on the plane by Zhan Haoze. Chen Yongchang's illegitimate son was also sent away. If it weren't for Zhan Haoze, it wouldn't have been so easy to achieve such a feat. However, that illegitimate son ran away after getting off the plane. Chen Yongchang was a key target of surveillance. But that illegitimate son wasn't. Chen Feifei was a little nervous when he ran away. She was more or less afraid that he would return to Lin City to take revenge on her. Right now, her foundation wasn't stable. If that person wanted to do something, although she wouldn't be powerless to resist, she would still be an obstacle. However, to Zhan Haoze, everything was under his control. Therefore, he told Chen Feifei not to think too much. That illegitimate son wouldn't be able to run far. He would catch him and lock him up with Chen Yongchang according to the original plan. In Zhan Haoze's heart, this was just a call under a transaction. It couldn't be any more normal. But with Shi Mengwan, it was completely different. It was just that her previous seeing is believing had turned into hearing is believing. Because of this reason, whether it was eating the roasted whole lamb or returning to the Cherry Blossom Manor at night, she didn't have a good expression towards Jean Hauser. At night, she didn't even allow Jean Hauser to touch her. Now that he touched her again, she had a huge reaction. The sense of shame that she was a mistress, and the resentment that Jean Hauser had caused her to become like this was very obvious. Therefore, she didn't want to bother with Jean Hauser at all. Including today, she was also forcefully dragged out by Jean Hauser to go shopping. If possible, she just wanted to return to Lin City as soon as possible. But in this situation, it was unknown if she could walk out of this small fitting room, let alone return to Lin City. Yet, Jean Hauser entered the door at this moment. She saw a very light smile on his face as he stared at the embarrassment on her face. "Are you okay? Okay?" Yes, in his heart, what did other people's feelings count for? She was angry in her heart, but Jean Hauser still had the ability to take advantage of her at this time. She was angry and reached out to push him without thinking. He advanced, she retreated, until there was nowhere to retreat. Afraid of being heard? What do you think would happen if I took you right here? You look very beautiful in this outfit. Scared? If you don't want me to take you here, then beg me. The things he did to her, the words that came out of his mouth sounded like a bastard to her. Jean Hauser, don't go too far. She hadn't forgotten about the apparel incident last year. She absolutely did not want to become the heroine of such an event. You don't have the slightest sincerity in your pleading. If you listen to me tonight, I'll let you go. How about it? Shi Mengwan had no choice but to lower her head. Please. In the end, Shi Mengwan was carried out of the fitting room by Jean Hauser, and he even kindly covered her face so that she wouldn't be seen by Hua Jinyao or Su Qingseng. However, Shi Mengwan heard the words, "Remember, you owe me again." This shameless bastard. If it weren't for him, how could she have fallen into such a situation? She still owed him again? How thick-skinned was this person? After leaving the ancient city, Shi Mengwan wasn't in the mood to shop anymore. She said that she wanted to go back. Jean Hauser didn't argue with her and brought her into the car. The majestic motorcade once again drove from the parking lot of the ancient city to Cherry Blossom Manor. It was night. Shi Mengwan, who had taken a shower, went to bed early. She wanted to avoid Jean Hauser, so she closed her eyes and pretended to be asleep before he finished his work. She thought that Jean Hauser would let her go if she fell asleep. But it turned out that she was too naive. In a daze, she felt someone pressing on her. That feeling reminded her of a big wolf dog she had raised when she was young. It always liked to pounce on her like this. "Big Yellow, get down," she said in a daze. She didn't forget to reach out and push Big Yellow away. This time, Big Yellow was very persistent. She pushed it a few times but couldn't push it down. Shi Mengwan called out again. "Big Yellow, stop fooling around." Jean Hauser propped himself up with one hand and looked at Shi Mengwan. She was really sleeping soundly. There was also Big Yellow? Jean Hauser's face darkened slightly when he heard the name of some kind of animal. He no longer hesitated and began to take off Shi Mengwan's clothes. There were naturally all kinds of pajamas in the cloakroom. Shi Mengwan chose the most conservative kind. The round-necked cotton pajamas wrapped tightly around her body. But even so, Jean Hauser still saw some of her sexuality. Shi Mengwan had an extremely charming face, but it didn't make her look so beautiful. Instead, the more he looked at her, the more beautiful she became. It was naturally troublesome to take off this set of pajamas. Jean Hauser tried it, but Shi Mengwan was sleeping soundly. His hands didn't stop moving. Just as he was about to lift the clothes up and help her take them off completely, she once again treated him as Big Yellow and pushed him down. Jean Hauser narrowed his eyes. He propped up his arm and stared at Shi Mengwan's hand for a long time. Finally, he got up and left. However, he didn't leave. Instead, he went to get a pair of scissors. The heater was turned on in the room, so he wasn't worried that Shi Mengwan would catch a cold. Jean Hauser used a pair of scissors to fry the comfortable but expensive pajamas just like that. The clothes were cut inch by inch, and the scenery that was previously tightly wrapped was naturally revealed. He cut very carefully and almost didn't touch Shi Mengwan's skin. Putting down the scissors, he continued to take off her pants. This was much easier. However, when he completely took it off, Shi Mengwan also woke up. She dreamed that Big Yellow refused to get off her body no matter what, but it even pulled up her blanket. At first, she tried to reach out to pull it, but later, she realized that she couldn't stop it. When she realized that it wasn't Big Yellow who was pulling her pants and woke up, she realized that other than a pair of underwear, she was almost completely naked. Her face turned red, and she instantly woke up. She glared at the culprit. "Jean Hauser, what are you doing?" Jean Hauser was about to continue tearing off the last small piece of cloth, but he didn't expect Shi Mengwan to wake up. When he met her angry eyes, he propped up his body again and moved closer to her. His lips pointed at her cheek. He kissed her lips, then moved his lips over and landed on her earlobe. He gently bit the small jade bead. "What do you think I'm doing?" You go down for me. Go down." Jean Hauser chuckled. His big hand picked up Shi Mengwan's black hair that was scattered on the pillow and sniffed. "Your memory isn't very good. Do you want me to remind you what you promised me?" "What?" Shi Mengwan woke up, but she was still in a daze. She didn't understand what he meant at all. "Previously in the ancient city, you promised me that you would listen to me when you came back." Shi Mengwan's expression froze. She suddenly reacted. In front of her, Jean Hauser was half lying there with one hand supporting his body. His burning gaze was like that of a wolf as he stared at her. How could such a Jean Hauser not make her afraid? Without thinking, she wanted to get off the bed. Jean Hauser easily wrapped his arms around her waist. "What? Do you want to go back on your word?" Shi Mengwan swallowed her saliva. She really didn't know how to respond to this. "You're a scoundrel." At that time, she had no other choice. "Scoundrel? Who's a scoundrel?" Jean Hauser retracted his arm, and she pressed close to his body. He had just taken a shower and only had a bath towel on his body. Touching his slightly warm chest, Shi Mengwan felt a little thirsty. "Of course it's you. If it weren't for you, how could I?" He didn't finish his sentence, but Jean Hauser understood what he meant. He chuckled and raised her chin with his other hand. "So, you don't want to admit it now, do you?" "Who wanted to admit it?" Shi Mengwan pushed him, and Jean Hauser bit her lips. "It's fine if you don't want to admit it." He took a few steps back and his gaze fell on Shi Mengwan's face, as if he was thinking. "Speaking of which, I've worked with President Hua 2 or 3 times. The manor we're living in now was given by the Hua family's Tianyu group. We've worked together so many times and we're living in a house developed by others, but I've never invited him here as a guest. It's really a little rude." Seeing that Shi Mengwan's little face was gradually turning pale, he slowly said, "Why don't I be the host tomorrow and invite President Hua and Mrs. Hua to my humble house? I can also be considered to be a host? What do you think?" "Not much?" This blatant threat made Shi Mengwan's expression very ugly. She glared at Jean Hauser in front of her, wishing that she could glare at his face. However, at this moment, she was lying down and wasn't wearing any clothes. No matter how she glared at him, she didn't have any imposing manner. Instead, to Jean Hauser, it was like seduction. "You don't object? Then it's settled." Jean Hauser got up and was about to get off the bed. "I'll get someone to arrange it now." "Enough." Shi Mengwan quickly sat up and reached out to grab his hand. Her face was very red. "What exactly do you want?" "I told you, you'll listen to me today." Shi Mengwan was extremely annoyed. Did she have any other choice now? She closed her eyes and nodded. She lay back on the bed. Jean Hauser narrowed his eyes at her expression, as if she was about to die. He stared at Shi Mengwan's face for a while, then suddenly got up and left. The sudden sound of footsteps leaving surprised Shi Mengwan. She really didn't understand why he would be so kind as to let her go. She lowered her head and looked at herself. She seemed to have just realized her current state, so she quickly pulled up the blanket to cover her body. She curled up and wanted to find her clothes, but she suspected that Jean Hauser wouldn't let her go so easily. Sure enough, it didn't take long for Jean Hauser to return. This time, he had something in his hand. Shi Mengwen, who heard the voice, turned around and saw the thing in his hand. Her little face was slightly stunned, and she just stared at him blankly. Today is a good day to remember. Zhang Haoze took a few steps forward and walked to the bedside. He looked at Shi Mengwen, and his eyes carried a depth that she could see at a glance. So, let's drink to celebrate. As he spoke, he had already placed the 2 open bottles of wine in his hands on the bedside table. There were also 2 wine glasses placed there. Shi Mengwen swallowed her saliva. What was this guy trying to do? Realizing the danger, Shi Mengwen's first reaction was to escape. Zhang Haoze didn't give her a chance. The moment she got up, he held her in his arms. He imprisoned her body in his arms and sat on the bed, hugging Shi Mengwen, who was almost naked. Didn't you say that you'll listen to me today? Why are you running? How could Shi Mengwen not want to run? She was almost sure that what Zhang Haoze wanted her to do later would definitely make her feel very ashamed and unwilling. She didn't answer, and Zhang Haoze didn't force her. He was in a good mood today. He picked up the bottle of wine and poured the 2 glasses. He picked up one of the glasses and handed it to Shi Mengwen. Shi Mengwen looked at the wine glass and shook her head. I don't know how to drink. Even if she did, she didn't want to drink it now. The situation in front of her was too dangerous. Although she agreed to listen to Zhang Haoze, she still wanted to have a chance to breathe. Zhang Haoze narrowed his eyes and didn't force her. He directly drank the wine in the glass in one gulp. Just as Shi Mengwen thought that he was going to let her go, he pressed the back of her head and aimed at her lips. When Shi Mengwen got up from the bed in the morning, she hadn't recovered from that shameful and secret lust. Her limbs were weak and her body was weak. The bedding on the bed had been changed long ago. Not only the bedsheets and quilt covers, but even the mattress underneath had been changed. When she thought about how Zhang Haoze had shamelessly asked someone to come up and change the bedding after carrying her into the bathroom last night, Shi Mengwen wished she could find a hole to hide in. She didn't want to go downstairs at all, nor did she want to go out. Feeling someone come in, she buried her face in the quilt. But very quickly, the quilt was lifted. Get up and eat. Zhang Haoze sat by the bed and looked at her. The last thing she wanted to see was Zhang Haoze. She turned around and didn't look at him at all. I can't eat. One. Before his hand could touch her shoulder, she had already waved it away. Such a simple action made her body ache. It could be seen how much someone had gone overboard yesterday. Zhang Haoze, I want to go back to Lin City. She had had enough. She had been here for 3 days. On the first day, she had taken a quick stroll around the streets and glanced around. On the second day, she hadn't even walked 1/3 of the ancient city trip when she gave up because she met Su Qingsang. There was no need to mention today. Because of Zhang Haoze's craziness yesterday, her waist was now soft. Not to mention going out to play, she found it difficult to go downstairs. You haven't played yet. Why are you going back? Zhang Haoze didn't understand why she was throwing a tantrum again. She had clearly agreed to stay for a few days. When he met Shi Mengwen's mocking gaze, Zhang Haoze's face heated up and he suddenly reacted. Sorry. He reached out to touch her cheek. His strength was gentle and gentle. I lost control yesterday. It wasn't just yesterday that he lost control. Shi Mengwen glared at him and wanted to bite him in her heart. Zhang Haoze, no matter what you say, I have to go back to Lin City. You arrange it. It wasn't that she didn't want to book her own plane ticket home, but Zhang Haoze, this extremely shameless person, had taken away her ID. She only found out later that she could use her bag as she pleased, but the ID inside had long been taken away by Zhang Haoze. How could she return to Lin City in such a situation? Can't you play here for 2 more days? When Zhang Haoze spoke, he happened to meet her angry eyes. He held her hand. You're not feeling well today. Rest for a day. We'll go out tomorrow. No need. She wasn't in the mood to play with Zhang Haoze. If I stay here any longer, I'll lose my life. Not only was she angry, but she was also embarrassed. Last night, she almost died in his hands a few times. How could she dare to stay? Moreover, Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao were still in Qing City. Qing City wasn't big, but it wasn't small either. There were only so many places she could play. If she met them again, she really wouldn't want to live anymore. Jean Hauser frowned and looked at the resistance on her face. He knew that he had indeed gone overboard last night. It was just that the feeling was too beautiful. He really couldn't control himself. The atmosphere was silent for a moment. Shi Mengwan said again, "I want to go back to Lin City." Jean Hauser looked at her as if he was looking at a willful child. When Shi Mengwan said that she wanted to go back for the third time, he finally reacted. "I'll get someone to send you back tomorrow." Shi Mengwan didn't believe that he would be so easy to talk to. "As she wished," Jean Hauser added, "but you have to accompany me on another trip tonight." "I'm not going." "You like it," Jean Hauser said very gently. "You were too tired yesterday. I'll take you to the hot spring tonight." Shi Mengwan looked at Jean Hauser. The person in front of her wasn't as evil and perverted as he was last night. He looked at her with a very focused gaze. Not only was he focused, but she also found her own shadow in it. Her heart suddenly skipped a beat. She turned her face away to avoid Jean Hauser's gaze and told herself, these were all false appearances. He was a bastard who had a foot in both camps, a scumbag. Jean Hauser had no way of knowing what Shi Mengwan was thinking. He was also very free today. To him, his rare patience and good temper were all used on Shi Mengwan. At night he really brought Shi Mengwan to the hot spring. As if he knew the trauma he had caused to her yesterday, Jean Hauser didn't do anything this time. The hot spring water made Shi Mengwan feel much more comfortable. After returning to Cherry Blossom Villa to rest, she slept until midnight. She was once again woken up by Jean Hauser's blood on the day of the accident. The nightmare came again, and this time, she woke up directly. "Woman, are you okay?" Jean Hauser slept with her. Shi Mengwan shook her head. She hadn't had this dream for some time. She had no time to care about Jean Hauser's concern. Shi Mengwan hurriedly went into the bathroom to wash her face and calm down. Her good friend, who she met once a month, came as scheduled. Shi Mengwan looked at herself in the mirror and suddenly heaved a sigh of relief. She wasn't pregnant. Jean Hauser's misdeeds these few times had made her confused. There were even a few times when he didn't take any precautions, and she didn't have the rationality to remind him. Now that her period had finally come, she wasn't pregnant. That was good enough. She came out of the bathroom and had just laid down when Jean Hauser's hand came over. He saw that her mood wasn't right just now, so he knew that she had a nightmare. He wanted to ask her how she was. "My period is here." Shi Mengwan closed her eyes and didn't look at him at all. "Don't touch me." Jean Hauser's hand stopped for a moment. He looked at the resistance on Shi Mengwan's face and didn't understand why she would lose her temper again. "I just wanted to ask if you had a nightmare." She didn't have to treat him like a beast. Every time he touched her, he wanted to have sex with her, right? "Thank you for your concern." Shi Mengwan still didn't open her eyes, and her voice was even colder than before. "I didn't have a nightmare. I'm fine. Save your concern for someone you should care about more." Don't think that she didn't know that he had contacted Chen Feifei when he was soaking in the hot spring tonight. Since he couldn't bear to part with her, why was he putting on an act in front of her now? He didn't think he was hypocritical, but she found it disgusting. Jean Hauser contacted Chen Feifei today because his people had found the illegitimate son who had run away. He had also sent him to Qin Yongcheng. He had arranged the rest of the matters. For the time being, other than the matter of the Chen family's company in Lin City, he had nothing to do with Chen Feifei. He didn't know that Shi Mengwan had heard his call. That was why she didn't like him so much now. He suddenly heard her say something about someone he should care about more. He didn't react at all to who she was talking about. "The person I care about the most is you." His words could be considered as a confession. Shi Mengwan didn't believe a single word. Just now, he had been persuading Miss Chen on the phone not to worry, but now he turned around and told her that the person he cared about the most was her? Who would believe him? She didn't believe him anyway. Shi Mengwan rested for a night and didn't stay for another day. The next day, as soon as Jean Hauser arranged the plane, she immediately flew back to Lin City. Sitting on the plane, she looked at the empty seat next to her. This time, Jean Hauser didn't return to Lin City with her, which made her feel very unreal. Jean Hauser really let her go home just like that? He didn't follow her, and he didn't send anyone to keep an eye on her? This really didn't make sense. But sure, Mengwan didn't care about him. Maybe Jean Hauser was satisfied after that night and was tired of it. Maybe he finally decided to be kind and let her go? Thinking of this, sure, Mengwan relaxed. Thinking of what Jean Hauser did that night, she still felt a little uncomfortable. But this kind of uneasiness was insignificant compared to the freedom and equal relationship she needed to enjoy. No matter how overbearing Jean Hauser was or how much he pestered her, it was over for them now, right? For the next month, Jean Hauser didn't come to look for her, which confirmed her guess. Good, very good. Jean Hauser finally let her go. Chapter 702. In a sanatorium on the outskirts of Qing City. Uncle Chi stood in front of the door and looked at Jean Hauser with disapproval in his eyes. Young master, now that the Jean family is in your hands, why do you get out of the way? Jean Hauser's voice was extremely indifferent. He looked at Uncle Chi, who was standing in front of him, with an ice-cold gaze. Uncle Chi gritted his teeth and was extremely regretful. He still wanted to stop him, but the people beside Jean Hauser had already stopped him. Just like that, Jean Hauser pushed open the door behind him and walked in. The environment of the room inside was very good. It wasn't like an ordinary apartment for the elderly. The room was very big, and there was a bed in the middle. Jean Kun was sleeping on the bed. There was a wheelchair near the bed. It was already winter in Qing City, and the wind was cold outside. Because of the previous stroke, Jean Kun couldn't move half of his body. But he was still conscious and could still move. When he saw Jean Hauser enter the door, his eyes widened. He looked at him as if he was looking at an enemy. You? After 2 strokes in a row, Jean Kun's voice was hoarse. He raised a hand to point at Jean Hauser. But he only had one hand that he could move, and it was trembling when he raised it. This made him even angrier, and the expression on his face looked very ferocious. Jean Hauser didn't notice the gloomy expression on his face. He walked to the bed, pulled out a chair beside him, and sat down. His legs were elegantly folded together. You, be ****. Jean Hauser looked at him and said the last 2 words for him. Let's change the words. You have to know that this be *** is also your seed. Jean Kun's face had already turned purplish red. Jean Hauser sneered. Isn't it? If you didn't give birth to my father, where would I come from? He chuckled and supported his chin with one hand. So, aren't you the be ****? Jean Kun was panting heavily. Jean Hauser looked at his agitated expression. By the way, you probably don't know, right? The Jean family is now in my hands. Nothing made Jean Kun more angry and resentful than this. When he saw Jean Hauser enter the door and knew that Jean Hauser wasn't dead, he already knew that something must have gone wrong. Now, Jean Hauser's words made him realize that someone had lied to him. Speaking of which, I really have to thank your good subordinates. If Uncle Chi hadn't handed the Jean family to me, how could I have gotten the Jean family so easily? Jean Kun couldn't even speak fluently. He pointed at Jean Hauser, his eyes full of resentment. About 4 or 5 months. Do you know what I've done in the past 4 or 5 months? Jean Hauser didn't need his response. He only came today to let Jean Kun know what he was capable of. That Jean you're interested in. Last month, he made a mistake in his investment and then accidentally slept with Brother Rong's woman. He's being hunted down by Brother Rong. You, Jean Kun's face had already begun to turn green. Jean Hauser frowned slightly. Logically speaking, Jean Yi is a member of the Jean family. Brother Rong has to give the Jean family some face. But I told him that he didn't need to give me face, and that he should deal with it as he should. Jean Kun covered his heart with one hand. He couldn't even say the word you now. As for Jean Yi's father, Jean Ji. And because his son was being hunted down by Brother Rong, he looked for Brother Rong. He wanted to take revenge on Brother Rong, but he accidentally died in Brother Rong's hands. TSK, how pitiful! Jean Kuan had already begun to pant heavily, and his face turned from green to black. Oh right, there's also Jean Li and Jean Yang. I asked them to develop a branch in South Africa. You know, we don't have a branch in South Africa. The two of them are the same. Their tempers are too bad. They are very arrogant in the local area, and they have conflicts with the locals. Now, one of them has 2 broken legs, and the other has a pair of broken hands. How tragic. Jean Kuan raised his hand again, wanting to point at Jean Hauze. Jean Hauze laughed. Your other son, Jean Quan, was scared out of his wits. He brought his 2 stupid sons, Jean Cheng and Jean Shi. He went back to his father-in-law's side. He took the initiative to call me and told me that he would never take a step into Qing City in his life. He just asked me to spare their families' lives. Look, Min Quan is my uncle after all. Since he begged me like this, of course I agreed. It's just that his wife thinks he's useless, and now she's divorcing him every day. Last time, she accidentally fell down the stairs when the 2 of them were fighting. It's said that she suffered a fracture and is still in the hospital. This has nothing to do with me. Jean Kuan put down his hand again, and his body was half curled up. He looked at Jean Hauze with red eyes, but he couldn't say a word. Oh right, after saying so much, I haven't talked about Jean Lai, who is currently staying in the Jean family's mansion. Jean Kuan's eyes were about to pop out, and the veins on his forehead were popping out. Don't worry, his hands and feet are still there. Other than not being able to go out and not having freedom, there's nothing bad about it. It's just that his wife isn't very good. Every day, she looks at Jean Li and Jean Yang's broken hands and feet and curses me 800 times a day. Jean Kuan's face was already full of pain. He was originally half sitting, but now his body was curled up. His face, which was already covered with age spots, was full of pain. You must be wondering why I didn't do anything to the couple, right? Don't worry, I like to take it slow. Keep them and slowly torture them. Jean Kuan was already speechless. He looked like he was about to suffocate in pain. Jean Hauze stood up at this moment and looked down at the old man who was already old and didn't have the ability to resist. Do you hate me? That's right. Don't worry, I won't let you die. Here, I will invite the best medical team to save your life. I want you to watch how the Jean family flourishes in my hands, and how it will be destroyed bit by bit in my hands. Looking at Jean Kuan, who had already begun to roll his eyes and was about to faint, Jean Hauze's gaze was cold. When you shot my mother, you should have thought of today. Before Jean Kuan lost consciousness, he bent down. Back then, you really should have killed me as well. After saying this, Jean Hauze stood up and left without looking back. Jean Kuan completely fainted. Jean Hauze left the room and asked his men to loosen the restraints on Uncle Chi. Uncle Chi didn't even have the time to say anything harsh. He hurriedly ran into the room. Master Kuan, how are you? Jean Hauze waved his hand, and doctors and nurses immediately rushed in. He glanced at the doctor who was walking at the back. Keep him alive. Don't let him die. I want him to live a little longer. When he left the sanatorium, Jean Hauze was in a very good mood. Tang Hua looked at the joy on his face. Boss, are we going back to the company now or go to Lin City? In the few months since he took over the Jean family, those people had been playing small tricks and making big moves. He had escaped death a few times and averted danger a few times. Last time, he was almost injured and didn't even have a good New Year. In such a situation, he didn't have the time to look for Shi Mengwan. The last time Shi Mengwan said that she wanted to return to Lin City, he let her go for her safety. Now that the problem was almost solved, of course he had to go and bring him back. Tang Hua nodded, but he suddenly thought of something else. Oh right, boss, President Hua's wife gave birth to a pair of twins. In 2 days, there will be a full moon banquet. The invitation has already been sent over. Mrs. Hua and Miss Shi have such a good relationship, so Miss Shi will definitely attend. Why don't we go to Rong City first? Otherwise, if we go to Lin City and Miss Shi goes to Rong City, Jean Hauze narrowed his eyes. Then let's go to Rong City. Help me prepare a generous gift. Not to mention the cooperation with Jean Hauze. With Shi Mengwan and Su Qingsang's relationship, There would be plenty of interaction in the future. Since that was the case, of course, he had to prepare a generous gift. Jean Hauser relaxed and thought of Shi Mengwan's beautiful face. With her personality, he believed that she would be angry with him for not looking for her for so long. When they met tomorrow, perhaps he should coax her. Jean Hauser, who had solved most of the trouble, was already thinking about how to coax Shi Mengwan. The full moon banquet of the Hua family's twins was indeed extremely lively. When Jean Hauser arrived in Rong City, he asked Tang Hua to check. Shi Mengwan had come the day before yesterday. Moreover, she was staying at the Hua family's house with Su Qingsang. Jean Hauser wouldn't go to the Hua family to look for her. After enduring for a day, he finally had the chance to see Shi Mengwan today. He had been around Rong City a lot these few years, and many people knew him. Especially recently, the Jean family in Qing City had been in turmoil. Jean Hauser had almost become a popular figure in Qing City. After greeting a few people who had worked with him before and having to socialize, he finally saw Shi Mengwan. Shi Mengwan didn't see him. At this moment, she was in front of Su Qingsang and looking at the baby in her arms. Her eyes were full of smiles, and her gaze at the baby was very gentle. He had never seen Shi Mengwan like this before. Jean Hauser was just about to go forward when a man came. Wan Xianyang, Hua Jiniao's childhood friend. The way he looked at Shi Mengwan made him very unhappy. He knew that Shi Mengwan didn't like Wan Xianyang, but having such a man appear by Shi Mengwan's side from time to time was enough to make him unhappy. In the past, he had no choice. In order to destroy the Jean family, he had to endure it. But now, he didn't need to endure it. Naturally, he didn't need to watch Wan Xianyang fawn over his woman. Fortunately, before he could go forward, Shi Mengwan had already taken the initiative to stand far away. Then, she excused herself to go to the bathroom and left. He followed behind her. He didn't expect that Shi Mengwan would send Wan Xianyang away, and then Li Junxing would come. Li Junxing was a person who was even more difficult to deal with than Wan Xianyang. In the past 2 years, he had made a lot of moves in Lin City. He had pulled down a group of people and helped another group of people. The key was that such a person actually didn't have any money on his hands. And he clearly saw it. Li Junxing's eyes revealed interest in Shi Mengwan. That was really not a good thing for him. 10 minutes later, he looked at Shi Mengwan, who was suppressed under him. She was clearly very surprised to see him. But the surprise was only for a moment. Her eyes quickly revealed other emotions. Are you crazy? Is this the men's bathroom? Looking at the accusation in her eyes, he thought about how she was able to smile at Li Junxing just now. In the end, Jean Hauser couldn't help it. He lowered his head and kissed her lips in a very domineering manner. Ever since they parted that day, the two of them hadn't seen each other for a long time. It wasn't that he didn't want to look for her, or even that he didn't want to contact her. It was just that the situation in the Jean family was complicated. Not to mention those illegitimate children that Jean Kuan had admitted, there were also many people with the surname Jean that he hadn't made public. Although Jean Kuan didn't recognize these people, he was still somewhat related to them. After all these years, Jean Ji, Jean Quan, Jean Lai, and the others had their own forces in the Jean family and Qing City. He had made a deal with Uncle Qi, but it didn't mean that he had made a deal with other people. It was better to be safe than sorry. In order not to put her in any danger, he could only suppress the urge to see her. Jean Hauser, let go of me. When he let go of her, the first thing she said made him unhappy again. She would always let go of him, break up, not want to see him and resist. But she could be 30% smiling and 70% gentle to other men. The longing that he hadn't seen her for a long time, coupled with the stimulation of seeing her chatting and laughing with other men, made him a little speechless. Wan Xianyang, Hua Jiniao's childhood friend. The second young master of the Wan family. Now, he runs 2 antique shops. Among them, Gu Longshuan's business is the biggest. Every year, it brings Wan Xianyang hundreds of millions of profits. This was only Gu Longshuan's shop. As for the other businesses, this second young master of the Wan family was also doing quite well. As for the other one, Li Junxing, the mayor of Lin City. His family has been in the right place for generations. Li Junxing is young, but he is already the leader of Lin City. In the past year, through the investment of a master, he has developed and renovated the old city area of Lin City. He is very popular in Lin City. I didn't expect you to be so good at seducing men. You can actually attract the favor of 2 men like this in one go. Seeing Shi Mengwan angrily slap him, Zhang Haoze grabbed her hand. Are you angry? He should be the one who was angry, right? Why didn't she know how to keep her distance from other men? Shi Mengwan wasn't just angry. She was simply furious. Zhang Haoze, not every man is like you. Like me? What do you mean? Zhang Haoze leaned over and leaned close to Shi Mengwan's face. His breath pointed at her cheek. Don't you like people like me? Who likes you? Isn't it you? It was said that men didn't recognize people after getting out of bed. This woman in front of her was the one who didn't recognize people after getting out of bed, right? Who was the one who kept calling me husband last time? Who was the one who said she loved me? Who liked me? Who was the one who kept asking me to F***CKU? Shi Mengwan's hand was grabbed by Zhang Haoze, but she was so angry that her face turned red. If this man hadn't shamelessly used such a method to force her last time, why would she have said so many shameless words? When she thought about the last time the 2 of them had sex, she couldn't bear to look back at what this man had done to her. Every time she thought about it, she would be so embarrassed that she couldn't show her face. Now, he had to bring it up again. Shi Mengwan couldn't hit him, so she was angry. She simply moved her mouth forward and bit his arm with all her might. She bit very hard. The grievance of being entangled with Zhang Haoze for more than a year, the humiliation of being bullied by him again and again, and the shame of being forced to be a mistress. At this moment, it all turned into the strength of her teeth. The more she bit, the harder she bit. She even tasted the taste of blood. She didn't let go, so Zhang Haoze let her bite. It wasn't until she bit her lips until they were numb and she couldn't bite anymore that she had no choice but to retreat. He finally hooked up her chin and made her look at him. How ruthless! He looked at the blood on her lips and gently wiped it away. The words that came out of his mouth made Shi Mengwan want to bite him again. Fortunately, you bit my hand. If you bit my brother, you won't have any happiness in your next life. Shi Mengwan opened her mouth to bite him again, but he hugged her. At the same time, he lowered his head and gave her another long kiss. When he kissed her until she couldn't breathe, he finally let go of her and hugged her limp body in his arms. He lowered his head and kissed the top of her head. My hand is so hard. It's a waste of energy for you to bite me. You'll even make your teeth hurt. He leaned close to her ear and gently nibbled on her earlobe. If you really like biting people so much, I'd rather you bite another part of me. Understanding the hint in Zhang Haoze's words, Shi Mengwan thought of the embarrassing scene from last time. She couldn't stay any longer. She pushed him away forcefully. Zhang Haoze hugged her waist and hugged her again. It's boring to participate in such a banquet. Why don't we leave first? If you want to leave, you can leave. I'm not leaving. She especially liked Su Qingsong's pair of twins. She couldn't wait to hug them for a while longer. She didn't want to leave just like that. You like children? Zhang Haoze looked at her and knew what she was thinking. If you really like them so much, let's have one too. Have one? Shi Mengwan suddenly turned around and looked at him. Her eyes were filled with mockery. Zhang Haoze, you said you want to have a child with me? Yes. Can't I? Do you know what it means for you to have a child with me? What? The child has to take my surname and enter the Shi family tree. Shi Mengwan sneered. Her face was deliberately embarrassed. More importantly, I'm not even married to you. Why should I have a child with you? You want to marry me? Zhang Haoze looked at her. There was a look in his eyes that Shi Mengwan had never seen before. Do you dare? The sarcasm on Shi Mengwan's face deepened. Do you dare to marry me? Zhang Haoze, do you dare to make it public? Do you dare to let others know that I'm your girlfriend? Instead of hiding and sneaking around like before. Did he dare? Zhang Haoze looked at the obvious provocation in her eyes and reached out to pull her hand. You want to make it public? You want to marry me? You want others to know that I'm your boyfriend? I do. But do you dare? She had had enough. She had had enough of him coming and going as he pleased. She didn't want to endure it anymore. He had taken everything from her, but he could still let other women get close to him. More importantly, she had had enough of him having a fiancé. And she had to bear the blame of being the third party. She had had enough of all of this. She had already given him many chances, time and again, over and over again. Now, she didn't want to give him another chance. This was the last time. If he couldn't do it, then he would never come looking for her again. This wasn't in Qing City, nor was it in Lin City. This was Rong City, Hua Jinyao's territory. And she believed that with Hua Jinyao's ability and her relationship with Su Qingsang, Hua Jinyao would definitely be able to protect her from being harassed by Zhang Haoze. Seeing that Zhang Haoze didn't say anything, Shi Mengwan sneered and asked again, "Do you dare?" Zhang Haoze looked at her with a rare smile on his face. He suddenly grabbed her hand and led her outside. Shi Mengwan was shocked by his sudden action. She followed behind him and the two of them left the men's bathroom together. Coincidentally, someone was coming over to use the bathroom. Seeing a man and a woman leaving together, the other party's gaze made Shi Mengwan feel extremely embarrassed again. She wished she could find a hole to hide in. She glared at Zhang Haoze hatefully. It was all his. Every time she met him, nothing good happened. He always embarrassed her. While she was distracted, Zhang Haoze had already brought her to the hall. Shi Mengwan, who realized what Zhang Haoze was going to do, had no time to retreat. Just like that, she held hands with Zhang Haoze and appeared in front of everyone. Su Qingsang had just coaxed Nian Nian and was about to carry her to the nanny when she saw Zhang Haoze and Su Qingsang coming out hand in hand. Her eyes widened as if her eyeballs were about to fall out. Hua Jinyao happened to be surrounded by a group of childhood friends. He held her in his arms and thought about it. Wan Xianyang was extremely envious. He was about to coax Hua Jinyao into giving him a hug when he saw it from the corner of his eyes. His eyes widened for a moment. The moment he saw Zhang Haoze, he remembered who this person was. He had no choice. Who asked Zhang Haoze to be too famous in the past few months? In terms of methods and scheming, who could compare to Zhang Haoze? Just based on the methods he used to deal with his cousins and uncles in the Zhang family, this person made people feel a chill run down their spines. But now, such a chilling man was holding a woman's hand with a gentle expression? It was too late for Shi Mengwan to retract her hand. Su Qingsang had already seen it. Zhang Haoze held her hand and walked towards Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang really didn't have a good impression of Zhang Haoze. Last year, when she went to Qing City to play, she saw him with another woman. He originally had a fiancée in Lin City. Later, when she saw what he did, she disliked him even more. Even if Zhang Haoze and Hua Jinyao had business dealings, that was only between men. From her point of view, she really didn't like people like Zhang Haoze. "Mrs. Hua." Zhang Haoze put his arm around Shi Mengwan's waist and nodded slightly. "Thank you for taking care of Wan these few days." "Thank you." Su Qingsang blinked. She looked at Zhang Haoze and then at Shi Mengwan and suddenly smiled. "President Zhang, you're welcome. Wan is my best friend. It's my duty to take care of her. However, I don't understand President Zhang's thank you. May I know in what capacity, President Zhang, are you thanking me?" Wan's boyfriend and future husband, Zhang Haoze announced. He tightened his arm around Shi Mengwan's waist and let her get closer to him. "When Wan and I get married, please come to the wedding, Mrs. Hua." This was really a smooth answer. Shi Mengwan looked at him, the expression on her face very interesting. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.